In the heart of Centralia, Washington, there sits a historic treasure and a haunted jewel. The McMenamins Olympic Club isn't just a hotel, bar, and gathering place. It's a living time capsule of the early 1900s, when loggers, miners, railroad workers, and traveling souls filled its rooms with laughter, smoke, and secrets. Over a century of history has seeped into its walls, and with history comes something else. Shadows that refuse to leave. Tonight, I invite you to step inside. Close your eyes. Imagine the flickering glow of lanterns bouncing off old brick and creaking wood floors. And listen closely, because some say that the Olympic Club is more than a historic lodge. It's one of the most haunted places in Washington state, from ghostly figures in hotel rooms to whispers in the billiard hall, from phantom bootsteps echoing in the corridors to spectral laughter that chills the blood. The Olympic Club is alive with the dead. This is the most 25 haunting of McMenamins Olympic Club. Long before the McMenamins Olympic Club was restored into the warm and atmospheric tavern it is today, its bar was the very heartbeat of Centralia. In the early 1900s, and especially during the dark days of Prohibition, this was more than just a watering hole. It was a place where deals were struck, secrets were whispered, and men sought escape from the grueling labor of the mines, the railroads, and the forests that surrounded the town. It was here, in this smoky haven, that one bartender earned a reputation as steady as his pour. He worked tirelessly, day and night, tending to thirsty locals and passing travelers alike. He was known for remembering everyone's drink, for keeping order when the hall grew rowdy, and for turning a blind eye when certain bottles came out from beneath the counter that the law would have frowned upon. He became a fixture of the Olympic Club, as inseparable from the building as the brick walls themselves. Yet some believe he became too much a part of the place, so much so that even death could not pry him away. Visitors stepping into the bar today, now restored with its polished wood and vintage charm, often comment on the lingering aura of the past. There is a weight in the air, as though the old stories are alive in the beams overhead. But certain guests, and more than a few staff, whisper of experiences far stranger than atmosphere alone. Late at night, when the last customer has gone and the lights are dimmed, the room refuses to sleep. The faint clink of glasses echoes from the shelves, though no one touches them. A bar stool scrapes slowly against the wooden floor, the sound sharp in the silence, as if someone unseen is taking a seat and waiting for service. On quieter nights, an unmistakable scent drifts through the tavern. Tobacco smoke, rich and pungent, curling through the air despite the fact that smoking has long been banned. More than once, a guest has sworn to glimpse something in the great bar mirror, a reflection of a man who is not there. They describe him the same way, dressed neatly, almost old-fashioned, with rolled-up sleeves, a crisp vest, and sleeve garters tight on his arms. He stands with a rag and a glass in hand, polishing slowly, eyes fixed downward, as though lost in his eternal task. Yet, when the witness turns, there is nothing but empty space and the faint impression that someone has just stepped away. For the staff who closed the bar, the stories run even deeper. One former bartender recalled hearing a voice one night while locking up. It was low, gruff, and barely above a whisper, saying only, "Last call." The man turned, thinking a coworker was teasing him, but the room was deserted. Another employee described the sensation of a presence moving behind the bar, brushing past with the distinct chill of air displaced by a figure unseen. The bottles rattled softly as if touched by invisible hands, and the old wooden counter creaked under a weight that wasn't there. Locals like to say, the ghostly bartender is simply keeping watch, tending his domain even after life has passed. To him, the bar is not just a job, it is his identity, his legacy. Perhaps he finds comfort in the routine, pouring phantom drinks and polishing endless glasses in the reflection of a time that no longer exists. Or perhaps he lingers out of duty, unable to abandon the place and the patrons who once relied on him. Yet there are those who wonder if his persistence carries a darker edge. During Prohibition, bartenders often walked a dangerous line, risking fines, arrests, and worse, for serving bootleg liquor. Rumors suggest that one such raid ended violently, though the details have been blurred with time. Some whisper that the bartender may have lost his life in the line of duty, protecting the club, the bottles, or the secrets behind them. If true, his spirit may remain not out of loyalty, but because of unfinished business, forever replaying the final moments of his devotion. Guests who spend enough time in the Olympic Club often remark on the peculiar energy of the bar mirror. Mirrors, some believe, act as portals or traps for the spirits of the dead. The bartender's recurring presence in its reflection has given rise to the idea that he is bound to it, unable to escape the shimmering surface where he appears. For those who look too long, the sight is unsettling. It is not just a trick of light. They say it is the sense of being seen in return. Even skeptics, those who scoff at ghost stories, admit that the Olympic Club has a character all its own. The bar is alive with echoes, steeped in the weight of decades of human laughter, sorrow, and toil. But for believers, the bartender is not simply a memory. He is a host, still welcoming guests, still keeping order, still unwilling to let go of the place that defined him. On quiet evenings, when the tavern's patrons have retired to their hotel rooms and the streets outside lie empty, some visitors linger at the bar just a little longer. They swear they feel eyes on them, steady and watchful, as if urging them to finish their drink before it's too late. And sometimes, just before the lights are dimmed, they hear it again, that faint scrape of a stool, that soft clink of glass, and a whisper from nowhere that chills the blood. The bartender of the Olympic Club may no longer be alive, but his work, it seems, is never done. He remains the eternal custodian of the bar, caught between this world and the next, forever tending to customers who will never come, and to a tavern that, even in its haunted silence, still feels very much alive. Room 201 at the McMenamins Olympic Club is both a draw for adventurous guests and a quiet terror for those who believe in the weight of history. The hotel, with its creaking floors and century-old charm, offers rooms that feel suspended in time, but none more so than this one. For many, it is the most requested room in the building, yet it is also the one that inspires hesitation as the sun sets and the door closes for the night. For room 201 carries with it a story that refuses to fade, the tale of the traveler who never checked out. The legend begins in the early 1900s, when the Olympic Club was a gathering place for railroad men, miners, and weary travelers passing through. Among them was a man whose name has long been lost, a railroad worker who had come to town on business. He checked into room 201, a modest but comfortable space, and was seen that evening drinking quietly in the bar below. He retired early, and when the staff entered the next morning, they found him lifeless, as if sleep had simply carried him away forever. No foul play was suspected, no illness was recorded, but said that his heart simply gave out. Yet some believe he never truly left. Stories of strange happenings in room 201 began not long after his death. Guests would wake in the middle of the night to hear footsteps pacing slowly outside the door, the measured stride of heavy boots moving back and forth along the hallway. At times, the steps would halt directly in front of the room, followed by the faint but deliberate sound of the brass doorknob turning. Guests describe watching in fear as the knob shudders in place, twisting slowly as though someone is trying to enter. Yet no one is ever there. Even more disturbing is what happens within the room itself. Many who have stayed there report the unnerving sensation of the mattress dipping under unseen weight, as if someone has sat down beside them in the dark. The pressure lingers just long enough to confirm it is not imagination, before fading into emptiness. Some guests lie frozen, too terrified to move, while others bolt upright, only to find the room still, the air thick with an unnatural chill. Then there are those who speak of the figure at the window. On more than one occasion, guests claim to have woken in the dead of night to find a shadowy man standing motionless, his form barely outlined against the glass. He does not turn, does not move, only stares outward into the darkness beyond, as though waiting for something or someone that never arrives. Those who have witnessed him describe the air growing heavy, the silence pressing in, before the figure fades like smoke dissolving into the night. The consistency of the accounts has made room 201 infamous. Some travelers request it out of curiosity, hoping for a brush with the paranormal, while others avoid it entirely. Unwilling to risk the disturbance of an unseen roommate, the staff, though often discreet, acknowledged the room's reputation. They admit that more guests cut their stays short in room 201 than in any other part of the hotel. There are theories, of course, about why the traveler lingers. Some believe he is waiting for the train he never caught, his spirit bound to the rhythm of the railroad that defined his life. Others suggest he may not even realize he has died, caught in a restless cycle of pacing, entering, and watching, unaware that time has long since left him behind. A darker theory whispers that perhaps his death was not so peaceful after all, that something unfinished or unjust ties him to the room where he last laid his head. Whatever the cause, the atmosphere of room 201 is undeniable. Guests describe an immediate change upon entering, an oppressive quiet, as though the air itself is holding its breath. The ticking of the clock feels louder, the groan of the floorboards sharper. Even those who have never heard the stories sometimes remark that the room feels crowded, as if occupied by more than one presence. One traveler recalled being awakened by the sound of boots shuffling right beside the bed. He opened his eyes to see nothing, yet the impression of movement filled the room. Another spoke of hearing faint breathing near his ear, steady and slow, though he lay alone in the bed. Perhaps most chilling of all was the account of a guest who rose in the night and caught sight of the mirror. For an instant, he saw a man reflected there, tall, weary, in workman's clothes, though when he turned, no one stood in the room with him. And still, the legend grows. Each new account adds another thread to the tapestry of room 201's story, ensuring that the traveler's presence is never forgotten. Some leave the room shaken, vowing never to return. Others embrace the encounter as proof that history clings tightly to the places it once touched. The Olympic Club thrives on its history, its walls echoing with the laughter and struggles of generations past. But in room 201, that history feels alive in a different way. Here, one traveler still walks the hall, still presses at the doorknob, still keeps his silent vigil at the window. He never checked out, and perhaps he never will. For as long as the Olympic Club stands, room 201 will remain his terminal station, where the living and the dead share the uneasy company of a night that never truly ends. The Olympic Club in Centralia has always been more than a hotel or tavern. It has been a hub of life, a place where laughter, business, and games once echoed deep into the night. Among its many historic features, the billiard hall stands as one of the most iconic for over a century. Locals and travelers alike have gathered around its green felt tables, the sound of clacking balls and chalked cues filling the smoky air. It was here that men wagered wages, made friends, and sometimes found enemies. But as much as the billiard hall belongs to history, some believe it also belongs to the dead. When the last of the day's patrons leaves and the lights dim, the room seems unwilling to fall silent. Staff tasked with closing the hall often report the strangest phenomena. As they sweep the floor or cover the tables, whispers drift through the space. Not conversations, not words spoken clearly, but fragments. A snatch of laughter here, a muttered curse there, and every so often a phrase that chills the blood. One more round. The sound does not come from one corner, but seems to float across the room, as though the walls themselves are carrying the voices of long-gone players. At first, many chalked it up to imagination. After all, the billiard hall is steeped in memories. It is easy to picture the ghosts of the past lingering, caught in a haze of smoke and drink. But the whispers continued, consistent enough to leave even the most skeptical staff uneasy. Some describe feeling watched as they move about the room, the hairs rising on the back of their necks. Others say the whispers grow louder if ignored, like restless patrons eager to be acknowledged. One worker recounted, staying late to polish the cues, determined to finish the job despite his discomfort. As he moved from table to table, he heard what sounded like a group of men grumbling over a game, followed by the distinct sound of a ball striking another. Yet the tables sat untouched, the balls perfectly still in their racks. When he set the cue back in its place, the sound of a coin hitting wood echoed beside him, though the bar was empty. He left quickly after that, refusing to stay alone in the hall again. Other reports tell of strange disturbances with the tables themselves. Staff sometimes leave a rack of balls neatly arranged, only to return in the morning and find them scattered across the felt, as if a game had been played in the dark hours, when no one should have been there. A few have even claimed to see shadows hunched over the tables, their forms flickering as though half-shaped, leaning down to take shots that never land. These figures vanish the moment they are noticed, leaving only silence and a chill in the air. The whispers themselves remain the most common and unsettling phenomenon. They never seem angry, but they are persistent. Laughter rises and falls, accompanied by the low murmur of men debating or complaining about a game. Sometimes a voice rings out sharper than the rest, demanding another drink or calling for another round. Then, as suddenly as it begins, the sound cuts off, leaving the hall wrapped in heavy silence, the kind that makes even the bravest hesitate to breathe. Why the billiard hall is so haunted remains a matter of speculation. Some say the energy of decades of games and wagers soaked into the wood and walls, replaying itself long after the original players were gone. Others believe certain spirits chose to remain, bound not by tragedy but by affection for the place they loved most. The Olympic Club was, after all, a sanctuary for working men who had little else. It offered camaraderie, competition, and escape from the hardships of life. Perhaps those who spent countless nights there simply never let go. Yet darker theories persist. During Prohibition and the rougher years of Centralia's history, not all games ended peacefully. Fights broke out, fortunes were lost, and tempers ran high. Some whispered that a man once lost everything in a card game adjacent to the billiards, and his rage spilled into violence that left blood on the floor. Though official records are scarce, locals suggest the whispers are not just echoes of harmless nights, but restless spirits tied to unfinished rivalries and unresolved grudges. Guests who linger in the hall late at night sometimes experience their own strange encounters. One man, staying at the hotel above, wandered down after midnight to admire the historic room. As he stepped inside, he heard the low murmur of voices, enough to make him believe the staff had left the radio on. He walked further in, only to realize the words were unintelligible, more like breath pressed into syllables than actual speech. When he reached the center of the hall, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was so absolute, he described it as suffocating. He left quickly, shaken but convinced he had not been alone. Another visitor, intrigued by the hall's haunted reputation, decided to bring a voice recorder while closing the room with a staff member. Later, when they played the recording back, they both froze. Between their own words and footsteps, faint voices bled through, one laughing, another calling out indistinctly. The recorder captured what their ears had only half noticed, the whispers that belonged to no living soul. Whether echoes or entities, the billiard hall whispers persist. They are a reminder that places can hold memory as tightly as people do, and that sometimes those memories take on lives of their own. The Olympic Club's billiard hall is more than a game room. It is a stage where the past refuses to bow out, where unseen players still chalk their cues and wait their turn in endless rounds no one living will ever see. For those who dare to enter late at night, the choice is simple. Listen closely, and you may hear the voices of the long departed, or ignore them, and you may find the whispers grow louder, pressing into your ears until you can no longer deny that the games never truly ended, and that some players never left the table at all. The Olympic Club has long stood as a gathering place steeped in history, echoing with the footsteps of those who once passed through its doors. Among the many stories whispered about its haunted halls, none stir the heart and unsettle the mind quite like the tale of the phantom woman said to linger on the theater balcony. Hers is a presence wrapped not in malice, but in sorrow or grief so heavy that it lingers, year after year, like a shadow that cannot be shaken. The story begins in the early 20th century, when the theater at the Olympic Club drew crowds eager for entertainment. The balcony, though less ornate than the main floor, offered a view cherished by those who sought privacy or cheaper seats. It was here, according to local accounts, that a young woman, broken by heartbreak, chose to end her life. Some say she had been abandoned by a lover who promised marriage, but disappeared into the transient life of railroad work. Others whispered that her family forbade her union with the man she loved, leaving her in despair. Whatever the truth, the woman climbed the steps to the balcony one evening and never returned alive. Since that day, the balcony has carried a weight unlike any other part of the building. Guests who sit there often report an inexplicable heaviness pressing down on their chests, as though sadness itself clings to the air. A chill, sharp and unnatural, settles around them, even in the warmth of summer. Some describe tears welling in their eyes without cause, a sudden and overwhelming grief that belongs to no memory of their own. It is as if her sorrow has soaked into the wood and refuses to release its grip. The most chilling accounts, however, come from those who claim to have seen her. She is described as pale, almost translucent, her face marked by a sadness too deep for words. Dressed in clothing reminiscent of the early 1900s, long skirts, high collars, delicate lace, she appears at the edge of the balcony, her gaze fixed not on the audience seats, but down toward the stage and floor below. Witnesses say her expression is hollow, a mask of despair, frozen at the moment of her death. For a few moments, she stands in silence, a figure out of time. But when anyone attempts to approach, she fades into nothing, dissolving like mist before their eyes. One theater-goer recounted entering the balcony during a daytime tour, expecting nothing more than a historic view of the room. As she leaned on the railing, she felt an icy hand brush against her arm. Startled, she turned to find a woman standing only a few feet away. The figure was unmistakable, dark hair pulled back, a dress that seemed decades out of place. The woman's eyes met hers, brimming with sorrow so profound it felt unbearable. Before she could speak, the apparition simply vanished, leaving behind only the echo of cold against her skin. Staff members, too, have their stories. A custodian working late one evening heard soft sobbing drifting down from the balcony. Believing someone had lingered after hours, he climbed the stairs to check. The sobbing grew louder with each step, tugging at him with an urgency that felt almost human. But when he reached the balcony, it was empty. Only silence remained, and yet the sorrow clung to him the rest of the night, a weight he carried home and could not shake until morning. Some paranormal investigators who have visited the Olympic Club suggest that the woman's spirit is tied not only to her tragic death, but also to the powerful emotions that consumed her in life. Heartbreak, despair, and the loneliness of her final moments may have anchored her to the place where she took her last breath. The balcony, once a seat for eager theatergoers, has become her eternal stage. There are also theories that her appearance is less a conscious haunting and more an imprint, a moment replaying endlessly like a tragic memory trapped in the walls. In this interpretation, she is not aware of those who see her, nor does she reach out intentionally. Instead, witnesses glimpse a fragment of her final hours, a sorrowful echo that continues to repeat itself more than a century later. Yet others insist her eyes follow them, and that the grief she emanates is not merely a replay, but an active yearning, a call for someone to see her, to acknowledge her pain. Not all encounters are terrifying. Some visitors speak of a strange compassion that comes with seeing her, a sorrow so moving it compels them to reflect on their own lives and losses. A few have even left flowers on the balcony railing in her memory, believing that perhaps small acts of kindness might bring peace to a spirit that has known none for so long. Still, the balcony remains a place most prefer to avoid when night falls. The combination of cold drafts, sudden tears, and fleeting glimpses of a sorrowful woman creates an atmosphere too heavy for casual comfort. Even without a sighting, many who linger there leave unsettled, burdened by an emotion they cannot explain. The phantom woman of the balcony is not a violent ghost. She does not slam doors, break glasses, or lash out at the living. Instead, she haunts in silence, her presence defined by grief too powerful to be contained by time or death. For those who dare to climb the steps and sit where she once stood, the experience is unforgettable. They leave not with fear alone, but with a sense of having brushed against a sorrow older and heavier than their own. The Olympic Club's balcony may be only wood and plaster, but it carries the weight of a woman's final despair, etched into its very bones. And as long as her sorrow lingers, so too will her shadowy figure, gazing down from above, waiting for a peace she may never find. The Olympic Club has no shortage of ghostly legends, but few are as unsettling or, as often reported as, the tale of the smoky apparition. This is not the lingering scent of old tavern nights, or the haze of cigars from decades past. What people describe instead is something far more uncanny. A living mist, drifting, curling, and reshaping itself into forms that defy reason. For staff and visitors alike, it has become one of the most chilling mysteries of the historic club. The phenomenon is always the same. Someone walking the dimly lit hallways suddenly notices a faint haze in the air, as though smoke has seeped in from a forgotten corner. At first, it appears light, no more than a wisp floating lazily near the ceiling, but within moments, it thickens, spiraling downward into the open space. The sight is unmistakable, cigarette smoke curling in deliberate patterns. Though the building has long banned smoking indoors, the air grows heavy, carrying with it the pungent scent of burning tobacco, so vivid that many instinctively wave their hands to brush it aside. But when they do, the mist does not disperse, it lingers, shaping itself into something that seems almost alive. Countless witnesses describe the smoke as forming into a figure, the silhouette of a man dressed as though he belonged to another century. Most often, they recall the shape of a bowler hat perched atop a human-like head, shoulders sloping beneath a haze of shifting gray. The figure stands for only a few moments before unraveling into ribbons of vapor, disappearing into the air as though it had never existed. Yet the smell remains, clinging stubbornly to the senses, even when no physical source can be found. One bartender closing up late at night had such an encounter. She described stepping into the hallway that led to the billiard room when she noticed the unmistakable smell of smoke. Thinking perhaps someone had broken the rules and lit a cigarette inside, she turned the corner to confront them. Instead, she was met with a cloud of gray mist hovering in the corridor. It shifted, swirled, and then solidified into the outline of a man no more than 6 feet away. She could make out the rounded crown of his hat, the hollow suggestion of eyes beneath its brim. Just as quickly as he appeared, he began to dissolve, drifting upward until only the faintest wisp remained. The hallway grew icy cold, and she swore her breath hung in the air, though the building's heating system was still running. She left her shift early that night, shaken to her core. Guests, too, have reported similar encounters. One man staying in a hotel room awoke in the middle of the night to the acrid stench of tobacco. He sat up, annoyed and confused, certain that smoke had no place in the historic inn. As he scanned the room, he saw the mist rising near the window, as though someone had been standing there, puffing on a cigarette in silence. Slowly, the smoke twisted, stretching into the vague form of a man with his back turned, shoulders hunched as if deep in thought. The figure lingered for several seconds, then unraveled into nothing, leaving behind only the fading smell of ash. The guest admitted he checked out the next morning, unwilling to spend another night in the company of such a ghostly presence. Even paranormal investigators have been baffled by the smoky apparition. On multiple occasions, teams have captured sudden spikes in electromagnetic readings coinciding with the appearance of the mist. Thermometers have recorded abrupt drops in temperature, sometimes plunging more than 10 degrees in a matter of seconds. Audio equipment has picked up faint crackling sounds, eerily similar to the hiss of a cigarette being lit, though no flame was present. Yet despite all attempts, no one has been able to explain how smoke could manifest without a source, nor how it could take on such distinct human shapes. Some speculate that the apparition is tied to the club's Prohibition-era history. The Olympic Club was once a lively hub for drinking, smoking, and gambling, a place where men in bowler hats and vests lingered over cigars and whispered deals. It was also a time when violence was not uncommon. A few suggest that the smoky figure is the spirit of a man who died in the club during those turbulent years. His essence bound to the building, replaying his final acts through the drifting haze of tobacco. Others believe it is not one ghost but many, the combined energy of decades of patrons, their pleasures and vices burned into the walls until they return in spectral form. There are those who see the apparition as a warning. The sudden cold, the thickening smoke, the sense of unease, all builds to a crescendo that leaves witnesses unsettled long after the mist has vanished. Some feel the figure watches them from within the haze, its empty eyes fixed and unblinking, as though silently judging the living who trespass in its space. A few even claim that the smoke seems to follow them, drifting closer as though curious, then breaking apart just before contact. Perhaps the most unnerving detail shared across accounts is the way time seems to shift during these encounters. Witnesses often describe the moments as unnaturally long, stretched thin, as if the air itself thickens along with the smoke. What should be only seconds feels like minutes, leaving them shaken and disoriented once the figure fades. It is this distortion, combined with the suffocating chill, that convinces many they are not experiencing mere imagination. The smoky apparition remains one of the Olympic Club's most haunting mysteries. It is not just a ghostly figure, but an experience that invades the senses. Sight, smell, touch, even the passage of time itself. Those who encounter it rarely forget the creeping dread that accompanies the swirling mist, or the way their lungs burn with phantom tobacco long after the air has cleared. In a place where history and legend intertwine, the apparition stands as a chilling reminder that the past does not always stay buried. Sometimes it rises, coiling through the halls like smoke from a forgotten cigarette, wearing the shape of a man who refuses to be forgotten. And though he appears only briefly, his presence lingers, heavy and unmistakable, leaving those who witness him with a single, unshakable certainty. Some spirits still draw breath, even if only through the haze of smoke. The long corridors of the Olympic Club carry more than the echoes of history. For some guests, those wooden floors seem to harbor footsteps that do not belong to the living. It begins as a faint sound, barely noticeable at first, like a soft shuffle brushing against the floorboards. Then it grows louder, the weight of boots dragging step by step, slow and deliberate, until the rhythm feels so close it could be just behind you. And yet, when you turn, the hallway is empty, stretching back in silence as though mocking your fear. Those who have experienced it say the sound is unlike ordinary footsteps. It lacks the crisp clarity of a person walking with purpose. Instead, it is heavy, burdened, as though the boots are weighed down by exhaustion or drink. The shuffle has a dragging quality, punctuated by the creak of the boards, giving the impression of someone stumbling home late at night, unwilling or unable to lift their feet properly. It is a sound that strikes deep into the nerves, too real to ignore and too eerie to dismiss. Theories about the source of the shuffling abound. Some say it is the spirit of a logger, a man who once frequented the Olympic Club when Centralia thrived as a timber town. He was said to drink himself into a stupor night after night, always climbing the stairs to his room long after midnight. Locals whispered that one evening he never made it, his body discovered the next morning, slumped in his bed, a victim of too much whiskey and too little rest. Those who hear the dragging boots believe it is his spirit, still weaving his way down the hall, caught in an eternal stumble back to a room he can never truly reach. Others insist it is not a logger, but a railroad worker. The Olympic Club's history is bound tightly to the rails, and the stories of those who work them are not always happy ones. One tale speaks of a brakeman who died tragically in an accident, his body broken beneath the weight of the very train he served. They say he had been staying at the club during his brief nights off, and that his restless spirit returned there after death. The dragging boots, in this version, are his eternally pacing the hallways, searching for the room he once called his own but never again will rest in. Guests who encounter the phenomenon describe a sense of being followed. One woman, returning to her room after midnight, said she first noticed a shuffle several steps behind her. The sound grew louder with each step she took, as though keeping pace. She froze, her heart pounding, certain someone was behind her. When she turned, the hallway stretched empty in both directions. The shuffle ceased instantly, leaving her in silence, so complete it felt unnatural. Gathering her courage, she continued on, but before she could reach her door, the boots began again, closer than before. She rushed inside, locking the door tight, and claimed she still heard the dragging rhythm just outside for several minutes, before it faded away. Staff, too, have their stories. One night, a bartender locking up the tavern heard the unmistakable sound of boots dragging overhead in the guest halls. Knowing no one was checked into that floor, he climbed the stairs to investigate. The shuffling moved ahead of him as he walked, always staying just out of sight. He described chasing the sound down the length of the corridor, only for it to vanish the moment he reached the end. When he turned back, he swore he heard it again, this time behind him, though the hallway remained as still as stone. Paranormal investigators visiting the club have attempted to capture evidence of the boots. Some have recorded faint, rhythmic noises on audio devices, slow, dragging steps that play clearly in the silence of the recording sessions. Others have used motion sensors in the hallways, only to find the devices triggered without anyone present. Cold spots, too, have been reported, sudden drops in temperature accompanying the sound of the boots, as though the air itself chills in the wake of the unseen walker. What makes the shuffling boots so unnerving is not only the sound, but the feeling that comes with it. Guests describe a pressure in the air, a weight of presence that is undeniable. Some feel their skin prickle as though watched, while others report the urge to quicken their pace, certain that something is just behind them. The sound never comes from the distance. It always seems close, near enough to touch, following in lockstep with the living. There are no reports of the apparition showing itself. The boots carry no visible form, no shadowed figure to explain their presence. They remain sound without substance, a haunting defined by absence. Perhaps that is why the phenomenon unsettles so deeply. The sense that something is undeniably there, yet unseen, stalking the hallways as if bound to them. Skeptics suggest the noises are simply the old building settling, the wood expanding and groaning at night. But those who have heard the boots dismiss such theories. The sound is too deliberate, too rhythmic, too human. It does not echo randomly, but follows with uncanny precision, step for step, shuffle for shuffle. To those who have experienced it, there is no mistaking the intent behind the noise. The shuffling boots remain one of the Olympic Club's most enduring mysteries. Whether the spirit of a logger, a railroad worker, or someone else entirely, the unseen figure walks on, night after night. Guests who hear it never forget the sensation of being followed, the dread of turning and finding nothing there. In those long, dim corridors, the line between the living and the dead blurs with every dragging step, reminding all who visit that the past is never truly gone. Some spirits, it seems, keep walking long after their bodies have stopped, leaving only the echo of boots shuffling endlessly into the dark. The Olympic Club has long been a gathering place for card players, gamblers, and men seeking respite from the labors of Centralia's mines and railroads. In its heyday, the club was known for long nights of poker, where fortunes were won and lost, and tempers flared over every hand dealt. Even today, the echoes of those nights seem to linger, particularly around the tables where deals were struck, and where some say the game never truly ended. Visitors to the billiard hall, where the poker tables once sat, frequently report eerie occurrences after hours. Staff closing late have heard the unmistakable shuffle of cards, crisp and deliberate, as if a game is underway somewhere nearby. The soft clink of poker chips sometimes accompanies the sound, echoing faintly across the polished wood floor. Then there are bursts of laughter, short, sharp, and hollow, that seem to emanate from nowhere. Guests passing through the hall after dark often feel the hairs on their necks stand on end, as though unseen eyes are watching their every move. Some claim to have glimpsed the players themselves. In the dim glow of the hall's lights, shadowy figures are sometimes seen hunched over the tables, hands moving swiftly to deal cards or stack chips. They are indistinct, flickering at the edges, as if caught between worlds, their presence more sensation than substance. Blink, and the men are gone, leaving nothing behind but the faint smell of whiskey. Stale and familiar, as though the spirits are raising a toast in the afterlife. One staff member recounts an encounter during a late-night closing, tasked with cleaning the billiard hall. He noticed a table that had been neatly arranged, suddenly disturbed. Cards scattered across the green felt as though a hand had been dealt without notice. As he bent to tidy the mess, he heard the shuffle again, followed by the rattle of chips stacking themselves into uneven piles. Heart racing, he straightened and scanned the room, seeing the vague outline of a man seated at the table. The figure wore a vest and rolled-up sleeves, leaning forward as if contemplating his next move. But when he blinked, the shape had vanished, leaving only the lingering scent of liquor and tobacco. Guests have also experienced the phenomenon firsthand. One visitor, curious about the club's haunted reputation, stayed late in the billiard hall with a friend. They had heard stories of ghostly card games, but expected little. As the clock struck midnight, they were startled by the sound of laughter and the rapid clatter of chips. A moment later, the cards seemed to slide across the table on their own, stopping neatly in organized stacks. When they turned to see the players, their eyes caught fleeting shadows hunched in the chairs, heads bent and hands moving as if dealing cards in earnest. The figures vanished when approached, leaving only silence and the faint aroma of whiskey hanging in the air. The recurring presence of the poker table specters has inspired numerous theories. Some believe the spirits are tied to the competitive energy that infused the club in its prime. Those who lost or won too much, or who died unexpectedly during a night of play, may have remained bound to the tables where their fates were sealed. The cards, chips, and laughter are not merely residual echoes, but active hauntings, repetitions of unresolved games played by souls unable or unwilling to leave the club behind. Others suggest that the spectral players are reenacting their final moments, trapped in a cycle that mirrors the intensity of their lives. The flickering shadows, the shuffle of cards, and the clink of chips create a liminal space where the living world brushes against the dead. A place where the tension of past games continues to exist. Even the smell of whiskey is significant, a sensory anchor connecting the present with the centuries-old rituals of the card players who once dominated the hall. Accounts vary in intensity, but nearly all involve the same elements: the shuffle of cards, the click of chips, and the ghostly figures that vanish the instant they are noticed. Witnesses describe a sense of immediacy, as though the game is ongoing, the stakes still high, and the players unaware of or indifferent to the living observers around them. There is no malice, only obsession, a relentless commitment to the final hand, the last pot, the eternal game that has no winner or loser. Some paranormal investigators have attempted to document the poker table specters. Audio devices have captured faint shuffling and chip clattering during times when no one is present. Thermographic cameras occasionally reveal flickering heat signatures around empty chairs, and motion sensors are sometimes triggered by unseen movements. Despite repeated attempts, no concrete explanation has emerged, leaving the phenomena firmly in the realm of the unexplained. For guests willing to linger in the billiard hall after dark, the experience is mesmerizing and unsettling in equal measure. The atmosphere is thick with history. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, and every sudden movement amplifying the sense that they are not alone. Some report feeling a subtle pressure around them, as though the ghostly players are aware of their presence, watching and waiting for the next hand to be dealt. What makes the poker table specters particularly memorable is the way they blend the ordinary with the uncanny. A card game is familiar and mundane, yet here it becomes a portal into the past, a stage where the dead enact a ritual that refuses to end. The mix of sights, sounds, and scent-shuffled cards, clinking chips, ghostly laughter, and the faint aroma of whiskey creates a sensory experience that feels deeply alive, even when the players themselves are anything but. In the Olympic Club, the past is never truly past. The poker tables carry more than felt, and would they carry spirits unwilling to fold, hands that will never be called, and a game that never reaches its conclusion. For those who hear the shuffle, smell the whiskey, and glimpse the flickering shadows, the experience is haunting, immersive, and impossible to forget. Even today, the poker table specters continue their endless rounds, hunched over their phantom hands, raising silent glasses in honor of games that will never end. The tables remain set, the chips stacked, and the cards shuffled, awaiting players who will never arrive. And though they vanish at a blink, their presence lingers, a haunting reminder that at the Olympic Club, some hands are dealt for eternity, and some players never fold. The lobby of the Olympic Club has always been a place of gathering, a warm and welcoming space where guests arrive with luggage in hand and the promise of a comfortable stay. By day, sunlight spills through the tall windows, illuminating the polished wood and vintage furnishings, and the air is filled with the murmur of conversation and the creak of leather chairs. But at night, when the last visitor has checked in and the halls have grown silent, the lobby becomes something else, entirely a stage for a presence that seems out of place in both time and space. Staff have long whispered about the vanishing guest, a tall man who appears suddenly, as if stepping out of the shadows themselves. Witnesses describe him as impeccably dressed, wearing a long coat that sweeps nearly to the floor, and a hat tipped just so, giving him an air of quiet dignity. He moves with purpose, his gait deliberate, yet there is a softness to his steps, almost floating over the polished floorboards. The moment he appears, there is an uncanny feeling that time has shifted slightly, that the modern day has been interrupted by a visitor from another era. The man's behavior is polite and almost ritualistic. He tiptoes through the lobby, sometimes pausing to glance at the reception desk, nodding as if acknowledging the presence of those who watch him. Some staff have noticed his hands tucked neatly behind his back or adjusting the brim of his hat as he moves. Gestures so precise they feel rehearsed, like the memory of someone carrying out a habitual routine. He never speaks, but the presence of his attention is palpable, and it often leaves an eerie hush in his wake. The strangest part of the vanishing guest is his his disappearance. Observers have seen him approach the main doors, his long coat swaying with each step. Yet, just before reaching the threshold, he vanishes entirely. One moment, he is there, poised as if ready to depart, and the next, he has simply dissolved into the air. There is no trace of movement, no sign of where he might have gone, only the lingering sense that he was ever so close to leaving, yet never could. One of the most compelling accounts comes from a front desk employee who decided to follow the figure, driven by a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. As she trailed him down the lobby, she noted how his boots made no sound on the floor, yet she could see them move in precise, measured steps. When he reached the door, she stepped forward, intending to confront him, but a sudden blast of icy air struck her like a wall. It was as if she had crossed into another dimension, a shadow of the past bleeding into the present. The man had vanished, leaving her alone in the warm, silent lobby, shivering and bewildered. The recurring nature of these sightings suggests that the vanishing guest is caught in a loop, repeating the same journey night after night. Staff speculate that he may be a traveler from the club's early days, a man who arrived expecting warmth and comfort, but met a fate that tethered him to this space. Perhaps he died on his way out, or perhaps some unfinished business keeps him hovering in the liminal space between arrival and departure. Whatever the reason, he never completes his exit, eternally poised on the edge of the lobby's threshold. Guests who have stayed late or wandered the halls often report an unsettling sensation in the lobby, even if they do not see him. Some describe a sudden drop in temperature near the doors, a faint pressure on the air, or the feeling of being observed from behind. Others speak of a strange tug at the edges of their vision, glimpses of a tall silhouette that disappears whenever they turn. The experience is fleeting, yet deeply affecting, leaving an impression of time bending and reality fraying just enough to unsettle. Those who have encountered the vanishing guest often describe more than just visual phenomena. There is an accompanying atmosphere that cannot be ignored, a sense of lingering anticipation, as though the lobby itself waits with him for some unseen event. A slight chill, the faint creak of floorboards, or the whisper of his coat brushing against the walls enhances the haunting, making the space feel alive with memory. Even after he disappears, the echoes of his presence remain, impressing upon those who witnessed him the feeling of standing on the edge of a moment that exists just out of reach. Paranormal investigators who have examined the lobby suggest that the man may be a residual spirit, bound to repeat the final steps of his life. Unlike some hauntings, there is no malevolence, here no intention to frighten or harm. The vanishing guest simply exists, trapped in a cycle of departure and non-departure, a traveler whose journey ended prematurely and who continues to tread the path he never completed. Sensors have occasionally detected sudden drops in temperature near the doors, and infrared cameras sometimes capture a tall, indistinct shape, though the figure vanishes before closer observation. Audio recordings occasionally pick up the soft rustle of a coat and a faint click of shoes on the floor, yet no one is there. What makes the legend enduring is the subtlety of the haunting. It is not marked by violent manifestations, crashes, or eerie cries. It is the polite, deliberate presence of a man who respects the living yet cannot join them, a shadow lingering in the margins of a space designed for welcome and comfort. Observers leave with a sense of awe and unease, a quiet reminder that some souls remain tethered not by anger or tragedy, but by the invisible threads of unfinished movement. In the Olympic Club, the vanishing guest stands as a testament to the delicate line between presence and absence, life and afterlife. He moves quietly through the lobby, tipping his hat and striding toward the door, only to dissolve before crossing the threshold. He is a traveler caught forever between arrival and departure, a polite observer of the living, and a haunting reminder that some journeys never truly end. For those who witness him, the memory lingers, a shadowed impression on the mind that whispers of the past and of a man forever walking the halls of the Olympic Club, never able to leave. The Olympic Club has long been a hub for adult gamblers, railroad workers, and travelers seeking comfort and camaraderie. Its grand halls and polished wood floors echo with the memories of a bygone era. Yet, for all the laughter and lively chatter that once filled the building, there exists another, more sorrowful presence. The crying child. Staff and guests alike have reported hearing faint, pitiful sobs drifting through the upper floors, often in the dead of night. The sound is unmistakable, carrying the plaintive tone of a child's grief, yet no child is ever seen. The crying often begins subtly, like a distant murmur, carried on a draft. At first, it might be dismissed as the wind whistling through cracks in the old building or the groan of settling floorboards. But soon, the sound grows clearer, unmistakably human. It is soft at first, a gentle whimper that tugs at the heart, then escalating into a steady series of sobs, echoing down the corridors with haunting persistence. Guests have described it as a sound that both alarms and unnerves, stirring feelings of protectiveness while simultaneously instilling unease. Historians and local storytellers have tried to trace the origin of the haunting. Some suggest that the child may have lived at the Olympic Club during its early years, perhaps the offspring of a family who worked or resided there. Records from the early 1900s are sparse, but there are whispers that a young child succumbed to illness, leaving behind the echoes of grief that never faded. This version paints the crying as a lingering memory, an imprint of a soul too young to move on, trapped within the building's walls and repeating its final moments in an endless loop. Visitors who have experienced the crying child often speak of an intense emotional pull. The sound seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, drifting down hallways, through stairwells, and across landings. Guests ascribe a compulsion to seek the source, drawn by instinct to comfort or investigate, only to find empty corridors, closed doors, and silent rooms. The effect is disorienting, as though the sound exists in a layer of reality, just beyond normal perception. Some guests admit to following the cries only to feel frustration and dread when they realize the child is nowhere to be found. There are darker interpretations, too. Some researchers of the paranormal suggest that the cries might not belong to a human soul at all, but to something far more sinister, mimic, a malevolent entity designed to lure the living closer with its plaintive wails. The precision with which the sobs appear and disappear, the way they seem to tug at emotions, leads some to believe the sound is deliberately manipulative, a trap set to disturb and unsettle. In these accounts, the crying child is not a victim, but a predator, using the trappings of innocence to mask something far more threatening. Staff who have worked late nights at the Olympic Club frequently recount their experiences with the phenomenon. A night auditor, for example, described completing his rounds on the top floor when he suddenly heard the unmistakable sound of a child crying from the far end of the hallway. As he approached, the sound moved with him, retreating just far enough to stay out of reach. He checked every room along the corridor. Empty, the windows were closed, the doors locked, and yet the sobs persisted, a faint, mournful echo following him until he descended to the lobby in search of reprieve. By the time he returned the next morning, the sensation of the cries lingered in his mind, a weight he could not shake. Guests have described a similar experience, sometimes accompanied by sudden drops in temperature or a sensation of being watched. The cries seem to carry emotion as well as sound pure grief that feels almost tangible. Some have wept in response, unable to resist the emotional pull, while others report a tightening in the chest, a physical reminder that something unnatural resides within the old walls. Even those who dismiss ghosts or spirits often leave uneasy, unsettled by the intensity of the feeling, as if the building itself is mourning. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phenomenon using audio recorders and thermal cameras. Recordings occasionally capture faint, high-pitched sobs, indistinct but undeniably human, that cannot be linked to any physical source. Thermal imaging sometimes shows cold spots along corridors where the cries are loudest, further reinforcing the impression that the sound is tied to something unseen, something existing beyond the normal plane of perception. What makes the crying child especially haunting is the combination of innocence and sorrow. Unlike aggressive hauntings, where objects are thrown or doors slam, this presence elicits empathy alongside fear. It plays on the instinctive urge to care for the vulnerable, to investigate and console. Yet every attempt to engage is met with frustration or emptiness, reinforcing the feeling of helplessness, as though the child is caught in an eternal cycle of sorrow that no one can relieve. Some guests have tried to leave offerings: a small toy, a flower, a comforting note, placing them along hallways or near the rooms where the cries are loudest. While the sobs sometimes pause, they invariably resume, a stark reminder that this presence cannot be soothed or displaced. Whether a lost soul or a malevolent echo, the crying child is bound to the Olympic Club in a way that transcends reason or human intervention. For those who wander the upper floors at night, the crying child serves as a chilling reminder that the past never truly leaves. Its presence is subtle but insistent, tugging at the heart, pressing against the mind, and haunting the corridors with an emotional intensity that lingers long after the sound fades. In the Olympic Club, the cries of a child lost to time continue to echo through the night, a ghostly plea that draws the living into a sorrow they cannot escape, a reminder that some losses are eternal and some voices never rest. Room 207 of the Olympic Club is, by all accounts, an ordinary hotel room during the day. Its furnishings are classic, reminiscent of early 20th century charm, and the air carries the faint scent of polished wood and old upholstery. Yet those who have stayed there or even glimpsed inside will tell you that the room hides a presence far from ordinary. The source of this haunting is its mirror, an unassuming fixture that has drawn the attention and fear of countless visitors. Guests first notice something unusual when they catch their reflection. It is subtle at first, a flicker of movement that doesn't match their own, a slight delay, as if the image is thinking before copying them. Many dismiss it as fatigue or a trick of the light, but those who remain overnight soon realize that the mirror does not merely reflect it, distorts, it observes, and sometimes it manifests something entirely unaccountable. The most common reports involve the reflection lagging behind the guest. Raise a hand, and the mirrored image follows a second or two later. Smile, and the mirror may remain blank-faced for an instant before mimicking the motion. It is an unnerving effect, like watching oneself in a world running slightly out of sync. Some guests have reported turning away, only to catch the reflection moving on its own, independent of their actions. The effect is subtle, but the dissonance between reality and reflection is enough to instill deep unease. Other accounts are far more disturbing. There are moments when the mirror seems to take on its own consciousness. A reflection may smile or frown at a guest without cause, or tilt its head to study them in ways impossible for their own reflection. One visitor described standing before the mirror in the middle of the night and noticing their image leaning forward slightly, lips curled into a grin that did not match their own. When they recoiled in shock, the reflection froze momentarily before resuming its mimicry. But the grin lingered, a detail not present in the real world. The most terrifying incidents involve the appearance of a second figure. Guests have reported seeing another presence materialize behind them in the mirror, sometimes faint, sometimes clear, often just a shadow or silhouette. When they turn around, the room is empty, yet the reflection continues to show a second person, observing them silently. One guest recounted waking in the middle of the night and seeing a shadowy figure standing behind their bed in the mirror. The figure did not move, did not speak, but its presence filled the room with a sense of oppressive intent. When the guest turned in terror, the figure vanished, but returned moments later as the mirror caught the faintest movement in its reflection. The haunting seems to grow stronger at night, often when the room is dark and the rest of the hotel sleeps. Many guests have described waking to find the mirror fogged over, despite the room being cool and dry, or catching faint whispers when leaning close to the glass. Some claim they can hear a soft breathing, slow and deliberate, as if the mirror itself has taken on a life of its own. Even staff members, familiar with the building's quirks and histories, admit that room 207 carries an atmosphere unlike any other. One particularly unsettling account comes from a visitor who had never believed in ghosts. While getting ready for bed, they glanced at the mirror and noticed their reflection standing slightly apart, unmoving, while they themselves moved about the room. When they approached the glass, the reflection continued to watch them, tilting its head as though studying an intruder in its space. Frightened, they stepped back, only to see a second figure appear behind their reflection, dark and unyielding. They fled the room, leaving belongings behind, and refused to stay in room 207 again. Staff reports suggest the phenomenon is consistent over decades. Housekeepers have returned to find beds rumpled, objects slightly moved, or the mirror showing anomalies even when no guest is present. The reflection sometimes behaves as though it is aware of observation, reacting to movement or light in ways impossible for a simple glass surface. Some staff prefer to avoid the room entirely, claiming an inexplicable tension in the air that grows heavier the longer one remains inside. Theories about the mirror's behavior vary. Some historians suggest that it may carry the residual energy of past guests who died or suffered in the hotel, their presence lingering in the glass. Others propose a darker explanation, that the mirror serves as a portal or window, not merely reflecting the living, but allowing glimpses into another dimension. The second figure seen behind the reflection could be a trapped spirit, an echo of someone who once occupied the space, or even something far more sinister, feeding on the fear of those who look too closely. For those who have witnessed the mirror's strange behavior, the experience is deeply unsettling. It is not only the visual anomaly that disturbs, but the emotional weight of being observed by something unseen. Many describe a sensation of being studied, analyzed, and judged by the mirrored figures, a psychic pressure that grows increasingly oppressive over time. Sleep is difficult in room 207, and even waking moments are tinged with unease as guests recall the distorted reflections they encountered. The mirror in room 207 has become one of the most infamous hauntings in the Olympic Club. Its strange and sometimes malevolent behavior continues to fascinate and terrify guests, blending the ordinary with the supernatural in ways that challenge belief. It is a room where reality bends, where reflections become more than mere images, and where the past or something resembling it continues to watch, waiting silently on the other side of the glass. Anyone entering room 207 is advised to be cautious. The mirror may appear normal, a simple piece of glass, but it carries an awareness that belies its surface. Blink too slowly, and it may act independently. Linger too long, and you may see figures that are not of this world. Those who have experienced it describe the feeling of being watched long after leaving, a haunting reminder that in the Olympic Club, some reflections are far more than appearances. And some mirrors do more than reflect, they remember. The Olympic Club, with its polished wood floors, grand staircases, and vintage carries the weight of over a century of history. Its walls have witnessed celebrations, whispered secrets, and long nights of quiet contemplation. Yet hidden within its stately rooms and hallways is a presence unlike any other. One that announces itself with the simplest of gestures, a whistle. The Whistling Man, as he has come to be called, is one of the club's most enigmatic and unsettling hauntings. Guests and staff alike report hearing the faint sound of whistling throughout the building. It is always a jaunty, old-fashioned tune, the sort of melody one might associate with a carefree evening in the early 1900s. Yet the tune never reaches its conclusion. It begins softly, winding through stairwells and corridors, teasing the ears of anyone nearby, only to stop abruptly. In the silence that follows, the absence of sound feels heavy, almost suffocating, as though the building itself is holding its breath. The sound is elusive, almost teasing in its unpredictability. It can start in the lobby, drifting upward along the grand staircase, or echo down a hallway where no living soul walks. Some report hearing it in the middle of the night, when the hotel is quiet and the halls are empty. Others describe hearing it during the day, though it seems to grow louder when no one is looking, appearing to come from corners that should have no acoustic source at all. Witnesses often describe a shadowy figure accompanying the sound. Guests recount catching glimpses of a tall man in period clothing, coattails brushing the floor, hands tucked into pockets, head tilted slightly forward, with lips pursed mid-whistle. His features are often obscured, blurred at the edges, giving him the appearance of being caught between worlds. When approached, he vanishes instantly, leaving nothing but the echo of the tune and a lingering chill in the air. One staff member, working a late shift, described hearing the whistling as she closed up the second floor. The sound started softly at the end of the corridor, gradually coming closer. As she followed it, a shadow materialized at the top of the stairwell. He stood casually, hands in pockets, whistling with a detached amusement, as if entirely unaware of her presence. When she took a step forward, he was gone, leaving the corridor silent, except for the faint ringing of her own heartbeat in her ears. She later admitted to avoiding that part of the floor whenever possible. Guests have reported similar experiences. One traveler, staying in room 312, awoke to the sound of the melody drifting through the walls. He got out of bed and followed it down the hallway, certain someone was playing a prank. The whistling wound through stairwells and corridors, always just out of reach. When he finally rounded a corner, there was no one there, just a long shadow stretching across the floor, and the melody cutting off mid, leaving the hall in a silence that felt unnaturally deep. Some theorists suggest the Whistling Man is a residual spirit, bound to the building by habits carried over from life. Perhaps he was a jovial guest or a member of staff in the early days of the club. Someone who whistled absent-mindedly while moving through the halls. The repetition of such a simple act over years or decades could imprint itself on the building, replaying endlessly for anyone sensitive enough to hear it. The abrupt ending of the melody could reflect the moment of his death, frozen in time and repeated nightly, a loop that never reaches its conclusion. Others propose a more supernatural interpretation. The Whistling Man, they say, may be an intelligent spirit, aware of the living and deliberately teasing them. The melody seems playful but also controlling, leading the listener along hallways and staircases, evoking curiosity, tension, and unease. The fact that the figure disappears before it can be confronted adds to the sense that he is both observing and interacting with the living in subtle, almost mischievous ways. The haunting is further enhanced by physical sensations that often accompany the whistling. Guests and staff have reported sudden drops in temperature as the sound approaches, or a light breeze on the back of the neck. Despite the lack of ventilation, some have felt the hair on their arms stand on end, a prickling sensation of being watched, even when the figure is not seen. The whistling alone carries an emotional weight, an odd mix of curiosity, amusement, and dread that leaves listeners unsettled long after the melody ends. Paranormal investigators who have examined the Olympic Club often note the difficulty of capturing the whistling man. Audio recordings sometimes pick up faint, almost imperceptible whistling that appears and disappears with no pattern. Motion sensors and infrared cameras frequently detect anomalies, shadows, flickers of movement, but no human presence ever coincides with the sound. It is as if the whistling man exists in a layer of reality, slightly offset from our own, appearing only when he chooses, leaving no trace but his song and the lingering sense of a presence nearby. The whistling man has become one of the most enduring and enigmatic figures in the Olympic Club's long history. He does not harm, but he haunting the halls in a way that blends the ordinary with the uncanny. A simple melody becomes a portal into another time, another consciousness, reminding all who hear it that the building is more than bricks and wood. It is a repository of lives, habits, and lingering spirits. For those who hear him, the memory of the whistling lingers, echoing in empty stairwells and quiet hallways. A ghostly tune that teases the edge of awareness. The whistling man may never be seen clearly, and the melody may never conclude, but his presence is undeniable. In the Olympic Club, his tune drifts through the nights, a spectral echo of a life once lived and a reminder that some spirits are content to linger, whistling their way through eternity, just out of reach of the living. The Olympic Club, with its century-old architecture and labyrinthine corridors, is a place steeped in history and in mystery. While most of the hauntings reported within its walls involve shadows, whispers, or fleeting apparitions, few phenomena are as unsettling as the locked door that opens itself, tucked away in a quiet corner of the building. This particular storage room has gained a reputation that makes even seasoned staff uneasy. It is a door that refuses to remain closed, a threshold that seems to have a will of its own. The first sign that something is amiss often comes in the morning. Staff who locked the door the previous night will arrive to find it wide open, swinging gently on its hinges, as though inviting inspection. The bolt is usually disengaged, though no one has touched it. Sometimes the door will appear untouched, the lock still fastened. Yet the gap between frame and door tells a different story. Something or someone has forced the room open. Even the most rational employees admit the sight is disconcerting, leaving a chill that lingers long after the door is secured once more. The sound associated with the phenomenon is particularly eerie. Witnesses often report hearing the doorknob turning on its own, accompanied by the slow, deliberate creak of hinges. The noise is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but in the silence of the night it becomes deafening. Some describe it as a slow, measured rhythm, as if someone is carefully, almost reverently, manipulating the door, inch by inch. The sensation is so vivid that even those who do not witness the door moving still feel the presence of a force just beyond their perception. A former employee recounted an encounter that remains one of the most chilling accounts associated with the room. Closing up for the night, they double-checked the door, ensuring the bolt was fully engaged. Returning to their duties elsewhere in the building, they were drawn back by the unmistakable sound of the knob turning. Approaching cautiously, they peered through the small crack between door and frame and saw something that froze them in place, a pale, almost translucent hand slipping through the opening. The hand was slight, delicate, and unmistakably human, yet it lacked color, warmth, or any hint of life. Summoning courage, the employee swung the door open fully, only to find the room empty. Dust motes danced in the dim light, and the air was still, as though the hand had been nothing more than a fleeting illusion. But the terror of the moment lingered long after. Others have reported similar experiences, though details vary. Some claim the door opens in the dead of night, seemingly of its own volition, moving slowly as if guided by invisible fingers. Some swear they've glimpsed fleeting shadows within the room, while others hear the faint rustle of paper or the scuff of footsteps, only to find the space empty when investigated. The effect is cumulative. Over time, those who encounter the door regularly admit to a growing sense of unease, a feeling that the room itself is aware, watching, and waiting. Paranormal investigators who have examined the room describe its behavior as characteristic of a residual, haunting a place where energy from past events is imprinted upon the physical world. Some theorists suggest the room may have once been the scene of a significant, though forgotten, event, leaving behind the echoes of a presence unwilling to be confined. The slow, deliberate movements of the door and the brief glimpses of a hand may represent residual energy replaying its final acts, trapped in a loop that continues to manifest for anyone nearby. Yet not all explanations are benign. A few suggest a conscious entity may reside within the room, interacting with the physical world in subtle but deliberate ways. The methodical movement of the knob, the sudden opening of the door, and the fleeting sight of the hand all indicate intelligence and awareness of those who enter the hallway. In these accounts, the room is more than a static echo. It is a threshold where the living and the spectral brush against each other, a place that refuses to remain closed to either world. Guests who have wandered near the locked door report an unsettling atmosphere that is hard to ignore. Even when the door is shut, there is a sense of anticipation, a tension in the air, as if something behind the frame is listening. Some have felt a sudden drop in temperature, or a prickling along the skin, small sensory anomalies that hint at a presence unseen. Others have noted a faint whisper of sound, almost like someone exhaling, or the rustle of fabric, further amplifying the impression that the room is not entirely empty. The locked door that opens itself has become one of the most talked about mysteries in the Olympic Club. Staff warn newcomers about it, advising caution when passing the corridor late at night. Even seasoned employees admit to avoiding the hallway if possible, moving quickly past the room without lingering. While the room itself contains little dust, a few forgotten items, and worn shelves, the phenomena surrounding it make the ordinary storage space extraordinarily frightening. Attempts to capture evidence have been inconsistent. Security cameras sometimes show the door opening slowly without intervention, though often the images are grainy or obscured by shadows. Audio recordings occasionally pick up the soft creak of hinges and the subtle click of the doorknob turning, but nothing more. Paranormal teams note that the manifestations seem tied to certain times, often late at night or during periods of quiet, suggesting an entity sensitive to movement, sound, or human presence. What makes this haunting particularly unnerving is its intimacy. Unlike other ghosts that appear in large rooms or open spaces, the locked door that opens itself is confined to a single threshold, a small, tangible point in the building that interacts directly with those nearby. The slow movement, the occasional glimpse of the pale hand, and the inexplicable opening of the door create a sense of proximity and vulnerability, making witnesses acutely aware that something, whatever it is not only present but aware of them. The storage room remains a quiet terror within the Olympic Club, a simple doorway that defies explanation. Locked or unlocked, it embodies a haunting that is subtle yet profound, a reminder that even the most mundane spaces can harbor secrets. Those who have encountered the phenomenon leave with the memory of a door that moves on its own, a hand that slips through a crack, and the unsettling certainty that the room is never truly empty. In the Olympic Club, the locked door that opens itself waits silently, patient and persistent, a portal to the unknown that refuses to be contained. Centralia's history is inseparable from the mines that once powered the town. Coal dust hung heavy in the air, miners labored deep underground, and life in the early 1900s was a delicate balance between toil and survival. The Olympic Club, standing as a social hub for the town's workers and travelers, inevitably absorbed the echoes of this rugged history. Among its many hauntings, none is more chilling or more tied to Centralia's industrial past than the legend of the headless miner. Those who have wandered the back halls late at night often recount seeing him, a broad-shouldered figure shrouded in coal dust, trudging silently through the corridors. His form is unmistakable. Even in the dim lighting, the hunched posture of someone carrying a weight far heavier than mere fatigue. Boots scraping against the wooden floors. Yet his head is absent, a void where a face should be, leaving only the outline of a man incomplete. Witnesses describe a visceral unease at the sight, a combination of sorrow, terror, and empathy for a soul that seems fractured. The encounters are brief but unforgettable. Patrons and staff alike have seen the figure appear at the end of a hallway or rounding a corner, only to dissolve into shadows moments later. The scraping of boots on the floor is often the only clue that he was ever there, the sound lingering longer than the figure itself, echoing through empty halls with a haunting rhythm. Those who follow the sound or attempt to approach him often find nothing but emptiness. Dust motes dancing in the pale light and the lingering smell of coal and damp earth. Local historians and storytellers tie the apparition to the dangers of the mines. Coal mining in Centralia was notoriously treacherous, with cave-ins, gas explosions, and fatal accidents not uncommon. Legend holds that this particular miner suffered a grievous injury in a collapse, one so severe that his death was as gruesome as it was sudden. Some say his head was severed or crushed, a brutal end that left his spirit restless, wandering the halls of the Olympic Club in search of what he lost. Others suggest that he perished elsewhere, perhaps in the mines themselves, but the club, as a central hub where miners congregated, became a focal point for his lingering energy. The headless miner is silent, a figure of melancholy rather than malice. Witnesses never report screams or aggressive behavior. Instead, there is a profound emptiness about him, a sense that he is searching for something, perhaps his head, perhaps peace, perhaps recognition of a life cut tragically short. Those who encounter him often describe a strange weight in the air, an oppressive atmosphere that presses on the chest and slows the heartbeat, as though the miner's grief and confusion are tangible. One particularly chilling account comes from a bartender who had worked the late shift. While cleaning the back hall, near the storage rooms, he noticed a shape emerging from the shadows. At first, he thought it was a coworker returning to fetch forgotten items. But the scraping of boots on the floor and the heavy coal-dusted shoulders told him otherwise. The figure stopped for a moment, as though aware of his presence, and the bartender caught the outline of where the head should have been, nothing but emptiness. When he blinked, the miner had vanished, leaving only the lingering scent of coal and damp earth in the air. Even after years, he recalled the oppressive weight of that brief encounter, as though the miner's absence left a space that was immediately noticeable and unsettling. Other witnesses report similar experiences, a fleeting glimpse at the end of a hall, the sound of boots in empty corridors, the oppressive sensation that someone or something is there even when unseen. The effect is cumulative, building an environment of tension and unease that can make even the most rational observer question what is real. Some staff avoid certain hallways after dark, convinced that the miner's spirit lingers in the areas where coal, dust, and human tragedy once intersected most heavily. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the headless miner with varying success. Infrared cameras sometimes pick up a flickering heat signature along the back halls, and motion sensors occasionally register movement when no one is present. Audio recordings capture the scraping of boots on wooden floors, slow and deliberate, with a rhythm impossible to attribute to animals or human pranksters. Yet no one has managed to capture a clear image of the miner himself. He remains elusive, a shadowy figure that can appear and vanish at will, caught only in the testimonies of those who encountered him firsthand. The haunting of the headless miner resonates precisely because of its connection to Centralia's industrial past. Unlike ghosts born of malice or tragedy unrelated to their environment, this spirit embodies the labor, danger, and human cost of a bygone era. He is a reminder that history is not merely dates and names on a page, it is lived experience, carried forward in energy that may linger long after the body is gone. In the case of the Olympic Club, the miner's presence ties the social space directly to the town's mines, reminding visitors of the lives that intersected within its walls. Despite the terror he evokes, the headless miner inspires a mixture of fear and sympathy. He does not threaten, attack, or harm. He simply exists, a fragmented soul navigating the corridors of a building that has long outlived the lives it once housed. Some say that acknowledging his presence, giving him a silent nod or a respectful distance, can lessen the weight of his haunting, though he remains a spectral sentinel of coal dust and tragedy. The Olympic Club, with all its elegance and history, houses many spirits, but few are as hauntingly tied to the town's identity as the headless miner. He appears silently, a figure of absence and sorrow, wandering the halls and searching for a wholeness that was violently taken. The scraping of his boots, the coal dust that clings to him, and the void where his head should be, serve as constant reminders that some tragedies never truly end, that some souls continue to walk long after the body has been claimed by history. In Centralia, the miner's story is remembered in whispers, a tale passed down through those who work in the Olympic Club and those who dare to explore its darker corners. He is the headless miner, bound to the building, moving silently through the halls, and forever searching for the rest of himself. Even if he is never seen clearly, his presence is undeniably lingering echo of Centralia's dangerous past, etched into the very heart of the Olympic Club. The Olympic Club's grand staircase has long been admired for its craftsmanship, polished wood, sweeping railings, and a design that speaks to an era of elegance and attention to detail. Visitors ascend and descend with ease, marveling at the way light spills across the steps from tall windows. Yet midway along this staircase, a phenomenon has persisted for decades, capturing the attention of guests, staff, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, a cold spot so intense that it chills the very bones of anyone who steps into it. The cold spot is subtle at first. A visitor walking up the stairs might notice a faint chill brushing against their ankles, or a sudden crispness in the air as they round the midway landing. The temperature drop is sudden and localized, a stark contrast to the otherwise warm atmosphere of the building. Witnesses often describe their breaths suddenly becoming visible, their skin prickling with goosebumps even during summer months. Electronics sometimes falter, phones or cameras glitching, as though the cold itself interferes with modern devices. For those who have experienced it, the sensation is undeniable, a pocket of frigid air that defies explanation and lingers long enough to leave a lasting impression. Guests who encounter the cold spot frequently pause mid-step, feeling the weight of something unseen pressing against them. Many describe a sense of heaviness, as though invisible hands are holding them in place. Combined with the physical sensation of cold that bites into fingers and toes. Some have reported sudden goosebumps along their arms, accompanied by a subtle but distinct pressure on the chest, a feeling of anticipation or warning that seems tied to the space itself. While the staircase is otherwise inviting, this section evokes hesitation, a moment of unease that cannot be ignored. Theories about the origin of the cold spot vary, and staff offer stories both tragic and supernatural. Some believe that long ago, a violent accident occurred on the staircase. Perhaps a guest lost their footing during a grand gathering, or an employee fell while carrying supplies up the steps. The energy of such a sudden, traumatic event, it is said, may have been absorbed into the wood and air of the staircase, leaving a permanent mark on the building. Those who embrace this explanation view the cold spot as a residual imprint of past suffering, replaying each time a living person crosses the threshold. Others propose a more mystical explanation. The cold spot represents a tear between worlds, a permanent scar where energy continues to leak through from another plane of existence. Paranormal investigators often point to the sudden and localized nature of the cold as evidence of an interdimensional anomaly. Unlike typical temperature drops, which can be explained by drafts or insulation flaws, the cold spot behaves erratically, appearing even in sealed rooms with no source of airflow. Witnesses report that the sensation is strongest when the building is quiet and empty, as though the space itself reacts to the presence of a living observer. Encounters with the cold spot are often accompanied by a sense of being watched, Guests have described brief glimpses of shadows along the staircase walls, or the feeling of someone or something just behind them. A staff member recounted pausing at the midpoint landing one night, only to notice the temperature dropping abruptly, despite the central heating system running normally. As the chill intensified, they felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes on their back. Turning quickly, they found no one. Yet the pressure of unseen attention remained, pressing against them as they hurried up the final steps. Paranormal teams have attempted to document the cold spot using thermal cameras, infrared sensors, and temperature gauges. Measurements consistently show a localized drop of several degrees at the midpoint of the staircase, far beyond what would be expected from air currents or normal heat fluctuations. Cameras occasionally pick up faint distortions in the air, like shimmering heat waves in reverse, as if the cold itself warps reality slightly. Audio devices sometimes record a low, almost imperceptible hum or vibration in the area, a subtle echo of energy that dissipates once a person steps out of the zone. Many guests who experience the cold spot report lingering effects. Some describe the chill following them briefly as they move away, a residual sensation that persists in their extremities. Others note an unusual sense of disorientation or heaviness in the limbs, as though the area temporarily disrupts their physical balance. Despite the anxiety it provokes, there is a strange allure to the phenomenon. Those who have encountered it often return, drawn by curiosity, hoping to feel it again and perhaps understand the mysterious force behind it. The cold spot at the staircase also seems to influence perception and emotion. Visitors frequently report a sudden sense of melancholy or unease while in the area, as if the space itself conveys the lingering sorrow or tension of past events. The sensation is subtle, often felt more than consciously acknowledged. Yet it adds to the overall impression that this portion of the staircase is not just colder than the rest, it is charged with energy, a threshold where the living brush against echoes of the past or the presence of something unseen. Some theorists suggest the cold spot functions as a bridge between worlds, a point where the living can momentarily sense the spirits of those who passed through the club long ago. The temperature drop, the weight in the air, and the fleeting sense of observation all combine to create an immersive haunting experience. Unlike other supernatural manifestations that are overtly frightening, the cold spot is subtle, insistent, and impossible to ignore, an invisible marker of events long past, yet still present in the very fabric of the building. The grand staircase remains one of the Olympic Club's most admired features. Yet the cold spot transforms the midpoint landing into a place of intrigue and fear. Guests and staff alike approach it with a mixture of reverence and caution, aware that crossing this section is to step into a space charged with mystery and energy. It is a chilling reminder that even the most beautiful, well-maintained spaces can harbor unseen forces, and that some histories, some tragedies leave a permanent impression on the world they touch. In the Olympic Club, the cold spot at the staircase endures as a phenomenon that defies explanation. Visitors pause mid-step, breath misting in the frigid air, hearts racing, and skin prickling with goosebumps. Whether the result of a past accident, a tear between worlds, or a lingering spirit, it remains a place where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, a threshold charged with energy that continues to intrigue, terrify, and haunt all who pass through it. The Olympic Club has always been a place of elegance and history. Its main hall, a stage for countless gatherings, celebrations, and quiet evenings spent in conversation. The polished floors and high ceilings echo with the footsteps of the past, and the chandeliers cast gentle, golden light across the room. Yet, amidst the beauty and grandeur, there exists a presence that captures the imagination and chills the spine, a figure known to many as the Woman in Red. She is described consistently by those fortunate or unfortunate enough to see her. A woman in a deep, flowing red gown glides silently across the main hall. Her movements are fluid, almost otherworldly, as though she floats rather than walks. The dress seems to shimmer subtly in the light, moving with an elegance that defies gravity. Witnesses are struck not only by her beauty, but by the sense of melancholy that surrounds her. She never makes eye contact, never speaks, and never acknowledges the living. Yet her presence is intensely felt, a magnetic pull that draws attention and curiosity. Visitors first notice her in moments of quiet, often during the evening when the hall is nearly empty. Some see her crossing the room from the stage area toward the back doors, others from one hallway to another. She appears to be moving with purpose, yet there is no sound of shoes on the floor, no rustling of fabric beyond the gentle sway of her gown. Guests describe a strange calm that accompanies her presence, a sense of being observed, yet not threatened. Many find themselves holding their breath, hesitant to disturb her or break the spell of the moment. The woman in red is elusive. Those who attempt to follow her find that she never leads them to a conclusion. She glides through the hall, then turns a corner or moves behind a column and simply vanishes. It is as though she exists in a layer of reality just beyond the reach of the living, visible only briefly, and then gone before comprehension can catch up. Guests who try to approach her often find themselves met with empty corridors and silent halls, their pulse quickening as the realization settles in. She is not of this world. Speculation about her origin varies. Many believe she was once an entertainer who performed regularly at the Olympic Club, a singer or dancer whose life was tied irrevocably to the stage. Perhaps she loved the spotlight, the applause, and the energy of the audiences she enchanted, only to have her life cut short before her career could flourish. In this interpretation, her spirit remains bound to the club, endlessly replaying her nightly performances. Drifting through the hallways where she once graced the stage, she moves in silence, unable to perform for the living, yet compelled to remain near the place she loved. Others suggest a more tragic story, that she was a woman betrayed, abandoned, or wronged, and her spirit lingers out of sorrow or unfinished business. The color of her gown, deep red, symbolizes both her vitality and the intensity of the emotions that anchor her to the world. In either case, her presence is marked by elegance and poise, a ghostly reminder of beauty intertwined with sadness. Guests have reported that the encounter with the woman in red leaves a lasting impression. Some speak of a lingering scent of perfume, floral and slightly sweet, that seems to accompany her movements. Others report a subtle drop in temperature, a faint draft in an otherwise still room. There is an emotional weight to her appearance, the blend of nostalgia, longing, and sorrow that impresses itself on the memory long after she vanishes. Even those skeptical of the supernatural find themselves questioning what they saw, haunted not by fear but by fascination. Staff at the Olympic Club have their own stories. A bartender recounted polishing glasses late at night when he noticed movement in the main hall. At first, he thought it was a patron, perhaps lost or distracted, but the figure moved too gracefully, too fluidly, gliding across the floor without a single sound. As he approached, she turned a corner, and he found only the empty hall. Others report glimpsing her from the balcony, her red gown vivid against the muted lighting of the hall. Yet she is gone before anyone can react. Employees agree that she is harmless, yet her presence is undeniably powerful, commanding attention without demanding it. Paranormal investigators have tried to document the woman in red, setting up cameras and audio devices in the main hall. While some capture fleeting red shapes or shadows moving gracefully across frames, nothing conclusive has ever been recorded. The phenomenon seems to resist full capture, appearing only when the observer is alone or in small groups, fading whenever too much attention is paid. Thermal cameras occasionally show a faint heat signature moving along the hall. It is as if she exists in a space parallel to the living, visible only to those she chooses. What makes her haunting so poignant is her silence. Unlike spirits that scream, slam doors, or seek vengeance, the woman in red is serene, graceful, and reserved. Her story is told not through words or actions, but through presence and movement. She evokes curiosity, wonder, and a subtle sense of sorrow. Those who encounter her often leave with a mixture of awe and unease, unable to shake the memory of her gown gliding across the polished floors. The vivid red against the golden light, the sense of a soul tethered to the past. The woman in red remains one of the Olympic Club's most enduring mysteries. She is a spectral performer, a silent observer, a reminder that some spirits are bound not by malice or fear, but by love for a place, a passion, or a life left unfinished. She glides through the main hall, unseen by most, yet unforgettable to those who do glimpse her. Her story is a haunting ballet of elegance and sorrow, a presence that drifts silently through the corridors, turning every corner into a space where the living and the spectral meet, if only for a fleeting moment. In the Olympic Club, the woman in red continues to glide, timeless and untouchable. She is a figure of mystery and beauty, a ghostly echo of a life once lived and a passion that endures beyond the bounds of mortality. Those who encounter her are left with a memory that lingers long after she has disappeared, a whisper of red among shadows, a spectral presence that haunts the hallways with grace, elegance, and the sorrowful poetry of the past. The Olympic Club in Centralia is a building steeped in history, its walls filled with stories of laughter, music, and the quiet hum of daily life. Yet beneath its polished floors and elegant architecture lies a presence that few can ignore. The phantom train. Patrons and staff have reported hearing the unmistakable sounds of a locomotive cutting through the night air. Yet when they look toward the tracks, nothing is ever there. The whistle, the rumble of wheels, the screeching of brakes, it all seems real, but the train itself is nowhere to be found. The phenomenon is most commonly experienced during the late hours, when the building is quiet and the streets near the old railroad line are empty. The first sign is often a distant whistle, low and mournful, echoing through the surrounding area. Guests in the main hall or rooms facing the tracks describe feeling a vibration in the floor. Subtle at first, but growing steadily, accompanied by the rhythmic rumble of a train moving toward them. The sound is so vivid that it convinces even the skeptical observer that a locomotive is approaching. Yet when they rush outside to witness it, the tracks lie empty and still under the pale glow of street lamps. The phantom train is not merely auditory. Witnesses report the low, resonant hum of massive engines vibrating through the ground, a sensation so strong that it can be felt in the chest and bones. The screech of brakes cuts sharply through the night, echoing off the buildings and creating an unsettling sense of urgency, as if the invisible train is struggling to stop a catastrophe that has already happened. Some describe the sound as layered, almost cinematic, with distant whistles, clanging metal, and the faint murmur of passengers in terror, coalescing into a hauntingly realistic replay of an event long past. Locals and historians tie the haunting to a tragic accident in the early 1900s, when a passenger train derailed near Centralia. Accounts from the time describe chaos and panic as the locomotive careened off the tracks. Smoke and sparks filling the night air, passengers screaming as the train collided violently with the surrounding landscape. Many perished instantly, while others were trapped, their final moments seared into the collective memory of the town. Some speculate that the phantom train is a residual echo of that fateful journey, a replay of a tragedy that cannot rest, bound to the area by the sheer intensity of the lives lost. Those who encounter the phantom train often experience more than just sound. Windows near the tracks sometimes rattle as though caught in a sudden gust. Even on calm nights, furniture inside the club vibrates subtly, floors seem to hum, and the air itself feels heavy and charged. Guests report the faint scent of smoke and oil, the kind that would accompany a steam engine, filling the hallways or rooms closest to the railroad. There is a palpable sense of motion and urgency, a feeling that something massive is hurtling through space, yet it cannot be seen or touched. Staff members who work late shifts provide some of the most vivid accounts. One bartender recalled closing the lounge around midnight when the distant whistle began. At first, he assumed it was a real train, still in operation on the tracks. But upon stepping outside, he saw only empty rails stretching into the darkness. The rumble grew louder, shaking the floor beneath his feet. And then came the screech of brakes, a sound so vivid, he could almost imagine passengers clinging to the seats. Looking down the tracks, he saw nothing, yet the sensation of presence, motion, and panic was undeniable. Some theorists argue the phenomenon is a residual haunting, a playback of energy left imprinted by trauma and death. Like a recording stuck on loop, the final journey of the doomed train replays, whenever the conditions are right: night, stillness, and witnesses attuned enough to perceive the echoes. Unlike intelligent spirits, the phantom train does not interact or respond to human presence. It is a memory made manifest, a moment of catastrophe, frozen in time, but accessible through sound and vibration. Other theories suggest a more sentient explanation. Occasionally, guests report seeing faint lights along the track's ghostly lanterns, or the glint of train wheels moving in rhythm. Shadows of figures, presumably passengers or railroad workers, are glimpsed on the periphery, only to vanish when approached. These manifestations hint at an intelligent energy, a replay of lives caught in their final moments, a tragic tableau, repeating endlessly, visible only to those in the right place at the right time. The phantom train evokes a complex mix of emotions in those who hear it. There is fear, certainly the primal response to the sound of a massive vehicle out of control, but also awe and sadness. Witnesses describe being gripped by empathy, imagining the passengers' panic, the engineers' struggle, the suddenness of disaster. The experience lingers, etched into memory, long after the sounds have faded, a haunting reminder of history that refuses to be forgotten. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the event with audio equipment, thermal cameras, and vibration sensors. While some capture faint low-frequency sounds or subtle floor vibrations, no clear visual evidence of the train itself has ever been recorded. The event seems almost selective, occurring only for those who are attentive or alone, reinforcing the idea that it exists in a parallel layer of reality, a bridge between the past and present. The Phantom Train remains one of the Olympic Club's most enduring legends. Its whistle cuts through the night, its wheels rumble invisibly over empty tracks, and its brakes scream in a futile attempt to stop. It is not malevolent, but it is impossible to ignore, a spectral echo of a tragedy that continues to replay for those nearby. For anyone who has heard it, the experience is unforgettable, a reminder that some events, some lives lost, leave a mark that persists far longer than anyone could imagine. Near the Olympic Club, along the old railroad, the Phantom Train waits in the night air, racing endlessly along invisible rails. A ghostly replay of a final journey that will never reach its destination. Those who listen closely may hear its whistle and feel its rumble. A haunting symphony of history, tragedy, and the unyielding persistence of memory. The Olympic Club has long been known for its elegance, history, and occasional brush with the supernatural. While much of the haunting activity occurs in the halls, rooms, or grand staircase, few places within the building provoke as much fear as the boiler room, tucked deep beneath the structure. The room hums constantly with the vibrations of old machinery, pipes, and boilers, its heat and noise usually keeping the environment lively. Yet for those who venture there after hours, the warmth and mechanical noise offer little comfort in this subterranean space. A darker presence lurks. The shadow in the boiler room. Workers who maintain the boilers or handle repairs often report a sensation of being watched, a presence that seems to move just outside the corner of their vision. What makes this haunting particularly unnerving is the shadow itself. It is massive, inhumanly tall and broad, and it moves along the walls and machinery in ways that defy logic. There is never a discernible source of light that could cast such a silhouette, yet it is clearly visible to the human eye. Some describe it as a smudge of darkness that seems alive, stretching and shifting as if it has intent, while others see it as a fully formed figure, an entity hunched or leaning against the walls, watching. The shadow never speaks, and it does not move in a manner typical of human motion. It glides or creeps silently, its edges wavering and pulsating as though made of smoke or liquid darkness. Workers who encounter it instinctively feel a chill, even though the boiler room is suffused with warmth. The air seems to thicken, and a suffocating weight presses on the chest. A physical sensation that grows the longer one remains in its presence. Some claim that if you linger too long, the pressure becomes almost unbearable, as though the shadow is testing your resolve or asserting dominion over the space. Several staff members have shared harrowing encounters. One former maintenance worker recounted descending the stairs to inspect a boiler late one night. The room was silent, aside from the hum of machinery, and the usual flickering overhead lights illuminated the familiar pipes and valves. As he stepped further into the room, a large, dark figure appeared along the far wall. He froze, heart hammering, convinced he was seeing another worker. But when he called out, the shadow moved not in response, but independently, sliding across the wall with a fluid, unnatural motion. The worker fled, feeling the oppressive weight intensify until he reached the stairwell, only regaining relief when he was several steps above the room. Others described similar sensations: tools falling inexplicably, wrenches rolling across the floor without contact, and lights flickering at random intervals. Some hear mechanical sounds distorted or amplified, as though the machinery itself responds to the presence of the shadow. The room, normally familiar to workers who handle it daily, takes on an alien quality of space where physics and expectation bend under the influence of something otherworldly. Local legends suggest the shadow may be tied to the early history of the Olympic Club. The boiler room has existed in some form since the building's earliest days, and stories speak of tragic accidents during construction or maintenance. Perhaps a worker was trapped or crushed beneath machinery, his life ending abruptly in the confined, echoing space. The shadow could be the residual imprint of such a life, a lingering presence unable to leave the room that claimed him. Unlike other hauntings, it is not mischievous or overtly violent. It is a silent, oppressive observer, bound to the mechanical heart of the building. Some paranormal investigators speculate that the shadow is not simply a residual haunting, but a conscious entity, aware of those who enter its domain. The sensation of weight, the subtle shift of air pressure, and the unnatural movement suggest intelligence. Those who have encountered it rarely remain to test this theory. Instinct and fear drive them out before any prolonged observation. It is as though the entity thrives on the discomfort it generates, existing in the liminal space between machinery and human perception, where sight, sound, and touch are all subtly distorted. Guests are rarely near the boiler room, yet those who accidentally venture down the narrow stairwell report an immediate change in atmosphere. The hum of boilers seems amplified, vibrating through the floors and walls, and the air feels heavier than it should. Shadows appear to move with purpose, and even those skeptical of the paranormal admit to an overwhelming sense of dread. Some have fled before descending fully, describing a sensation as though the room itself were alive, reacting to their presence. The shadow in the boiler room has become one of the Olympic Club's most infamous hauntings. Unlike other specters, those seen in mirrors, rooms, or hallways, this presence does not interact with curiosity or fear in conventional ways. It does not speak, move, toward, or attack. Its power lies in its silence and its weight, a suffocating presence that reminds visitors that they are not alone. The room, with its steel walls, pipes, and boilers, becomes a stage where an entity expresses dominion through stillness, observation, and subtle manipulation of the environment. Attempts to capture the shadow on camera or through sensors have produced inconsistent results. Some infrared devices record a cold, dark patch moving along the walls, while thermal cameras detect localized drops in temperature, despite the boiler's heat. Audio devices occasionally capture low-frequency hums, groans, or vibrations unexplainable by machinery. Yet no photograph or video has ever clearly shown the entity. It seems to resist being fully recorded, appearing only to those who are physically present and vulnerable to its oppressive energy. The boiler room remains a place few willingly enter after dark. Maintenance staff treat it with caution, visiting in pairs or during the day when the entity is less likely to manifest. Yet the legend persists, whispered among employees and guests alike. The shadow in the boiler room is a haunting of presence rather than action, a reminder that some spaces are charged with energy that cannot be seen fully, only felt, a heavy, silent reminder of the thin line between the living and the unseen. In the Olympic Club, Beneath the polished floors and ornate halls, the boiler room hums with machinery and fear alike. The shadow moves quietly, inhuman and unrelenting, pressing its presence on all who enter. Its silence is more terrifying than any scream, its weight more oppressive than any ghostly touch. For those who descend into that subterranean space, the shadow in the boiler room waits patiently, observing, pressing, and reminding all who enter that some darkness never leaves, and some entities require no words to terrify. The Olympic Club has long been a place where history and the present intertwine. Its polished floors, ornate railings, and echoing hallways preserving decades of life, laughter, and occasional tragedy. Among its many legends, few figures are as enigmatic or unsettling as the man in the bowler hat. Unlike other specters who manifest sporadically or with fleeting presence, this figure has been reported by numerous guests and staff, appearing with a consistency that has made him one of the club's most enduring and chilling hauntings. Descriptions of the man in the bowler hat are remarkably uniform. He is always sharply dressed, his suit immaculate, the bowler hat perched neatly atop his head. He is seen in hallways, reflected in windows, and occasionally standing at the edge of beds in guest rooms. His posture exudes authority. The way he carries himself suggests a man accustomed to respect, control, and influence. Yet he never speaks, never smiles, and never acknowledges those who notice him. Instead, he watches, silently observing, a presence that feels both commanding and alien. The first encounters often start subtly. Guests report catching glimpses of him in reflective surfaces, window panes, mirrors, or polished furniture standing behind them or across the hall. They turn quickly, only to find empty space. Sometimes, he is seen standing motionless at the end of a hallway, a figure perfectly still, framed in the dim light of antique sconces or moonlight streaming through windows. When anyone approaches, he vanishes, leaving behind only the faint echo of his footsteps, though no one can explain how such a sound can exist without a visible source. Staff members have stories that border on the terrifying. One longtime housekeeper recalled walking down a second-floor hallway late at night to check on a guest room. She noticed a figure standing near the railing at the far end. At first, she assumed it was a late-night visitor or a colleague, but as she drew closer, she realized the figure was unnaturally still, almost statuesque. The bowler hat, sharply angled, cast a shadow across the man's face, concealing features yet exuding undeniable presence. When she blinked, he was gone, leaving only an unsettling emptiness in his place. Guests who have seen him in their rooms report the same eerie combination of authority and silence. Some describe waking in the night to find him standing near their bed, perfectly still, observing them. A few brave souls have attempted to speak, asking who he is or why he is there, only to be met with silence. His eyes, when visible, are said to carry a sharp intelligence, a hint that he knows more than any living person could. Those who encounter him often feel both fear and awe, a sensation of being in the presence of someone or something that transcends ordinary human understanding. Speculation about his identity varies. Many believe he was once a manager, owner, or key figure in the club's history, a man whose influence and authority extended through every corner of the building. Perhaps he was a disciplinarian, overseeing operations with exacting standards, or a figure of respect among staff and patrons alike. His continued presence could be tied to unfinished business, a lingering attachment to the establishment he once ran with precision and control. Others theorize he may have died unexpectedly, and his spirit remains tethered to the club, replaying his role in silent observation, ensuring that the order he valued endures in the living world. Despite the curiosity surrounding him, the man in the bowler hat is not overtly malevolent. He does not harm, threaten, or speak, yet his presence is deeply unsettling. There is a psychological weight to seeing him, an oppressive sense of being judged or measured. Those who encounter him report a combination of fear, reverence, and confusion, a recognition that they are witnessing a spirit of importance, yet one whose motivations and intentions are unknowable. He exists in a space between worlds, visible, yet unreachable, authoritative, yet silent. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document his appearances using cameras, motion sensors, and audio recorders. While some capture fleeting shadows, glimpses of dark shapes moving unnaturally, or minor temperature fluctuations, nothing definitive has been recorded. The man in the bowler hat seems resistant to technology, appearing only to the human eye, or to those sensitive enough to perceive him directly. This elusiveness adds to the enigma, reinforcing the idea that he is not merely a ghost but a presence operating on rules beyond the comprehension of the living. The hallways and rooms where he appears carry an unmistakable energy. Witnesses often report a sense of tension in spaces where he is present, a subtle pressure in the air, and an intangible pull that draws attention to his location. Even after he disappears, the feeling lingers, a quiet reminder that he has been there, observing, waiting, and silently asserting his dominance. It is a sensation that cannot be ignored, a haunting that imprints itself psychologically as much as visually. The man in the bowler hat is one of the Olympic Club's most iconic and unnerving hauntings. His presence reminds all who encounter him that the club's history is not just preserved in photographs, ledgers, or architecture, but in lingering spirits bound to its walls. He is a figure of authority, of control, of silent observation, a ghostly reminder that not all those who occupy the Olympic Club are among the living. For guests and staff alike, the experience is unforgettable. They carry the memory of his gaze, the precision of his posture, the authority that radiates without a single word. In the Olympic Club, where history and legend coexist, the man in the bowler hat continues his silent watch, a presence that reminds all who see him that some spirits do not need to speak to leave an indelible mark on the living world. The Olympic Club has long been a place of warmth, conversation, and late-night gatherings. Its bar is a central feature, a polished wooden sanctuary where glasses clink, stories are shared, and the hum of laughter fills the room. Yet during the quietest hours, when the last patrons have gone and the polished floors reflect only the dim glow of antique lamps, an entirely different sound can be heard, a sound that chills the spine and unsettles even the most seasoned staff. It is the sound of phantom laughter, a presence so vivid, so unnervingly human, that it feels as though the very walls themselves are alive with malice. The laughter does not resemble the light-hearted mirth of ordinary conversation. It is jagged, uneven, and mocking, sometimes beginning with a soft chuckle before erupting into a harsh, echoing roar that ricochets off walls, tables, and ceilings. Staff often hear it emanating from empty corners, behind closed doors, or even above the ceiling, as if the sound originates from a place beyond the physical dimensions of the bar. Patrons who have lingered late into the night report hearing it from their tables, whispering in their ears. Yet when they turn, the room remains empty, silent, and undisturbed. One bartender, who had worked nights at the club for decades, recounted an encounter that remains burned in his memory. Closing the bar, after a particularly quiet evening, he was wiping down the counter when he felt a sudden, warm rush of air brushing against his ear, accompanied by a jagged burst of laughter that seemed to speak directly to him. His skin prickled, his muscles tensed, and instinctively he turned, expecting to see a mischievous late-night guest or perhaps a prankster hiding in the shadows. But the space behind him was completely empty, devoid of any movement, any sign of life. The laughter continued, echoing faintly through the room, before vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only a deep sense of unease. The phenomenon is unpredictable. It can start quietly, a faint chuckle that blends with the ambient noises of the bar, only to escalate into full-throated, almost demonic laughter. Sometimes it seems to interact with the staff, responding to their movements, laughter, or spoken words. One night, a young waitress, attempting to remain calm, tried to call out, asking if anyone was there. The laughter halted momentarily, as if listening, then erupted again, louder and sharper than before, echoing down the hallways and across the polished floors. Some speculate the phantom laughter is residual energy, an imprint of past events or emotions. that have seeped into the walls and floorboards over decades. The bar has seen countless patrons, heated arguments, drunken celebrations, and moments of triumph and despair. Perhaps the laughter is the echo of nights long gone, replaying endlessly in a distorted, mocking form for anyone sensitive enough to perceive it. Others believe the presence is more intelligent, a ghost or entity that chooses when and how to reveal itself, delighting in the fear it provokes. Unlike other spirits, it is not bound to a specific room or floor. It moves unpredictably, slipping from corner to corner, always just out of reach. Longtime employees have developed subtle ways to cope with the laughter. Some avoid being alone in certain areas late at night, while others maintain a mental focus, trying not to acknowledge it too directly. Yet the moment it surfaces, it is impossible to ignore. The sound carries an emotional weight and eerie mixture of menace, amusement, and intent that triggers the most primal human instincts: fear, caution, and fascination. The bar, normally a place of conviviality and comfort, becomes suddenly alien. Every shadow a potential source, every reflective surface a potential mirror of the unseen. Witnesses have also described physical sensations accompanying the laughter. Cold drafts move along the back of the neck, hairs stand on end, and the skin prickles as though invisible fingers are brushing against it. Some feel an oppressive pressure, a weight that presses on the chest as the laughter echoes around them, almost as if the room itself is leaning in to watch. One bartender reported that, during a particularly loud outburst, the air around him thickened, and his breathing felt labored, as though the sound carried not just through the air, but through the body itself, resonating in a way that transcends ordinary auditory perception. The phantom laughter does not seek to harm physically, yet it leaves a lasting impression. Staff and guests alike describe an aftermath of tension, unease, and lingering dread, as though the bar itself retains a memory of the encounter. Even after the laughter fades, its echoes remain in the mind, in the subtle shadows of corners, the quiet hum of machinery, and the faint creak of floorboards. It is a haunting that persists, not through overt action, but through suggestion, atmosphere, and the uncanny sense of being observed by a presence that is both invisible and intimately aware. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture recordings of the laughter, using audio devices, motion sensors, and temperature gauges. While some have captured faint, irregular sounds reminiscent of laughter or low-frequency vibrations, no device has ever provided a definitive explanation. The phenomenon seems tied to human perception, manifesting most strongly for those who are present, attentive, and alone, as though it is designed to interact psychologically with its witnesses rather than exist solely as a physical occurrence. The phantom laughter remains one of the Olympic Club's most unsettling mysteries. It is a presence without form, a sound without a source, yet undeniably real to those who hear it. Unlike other spirits or phenomena that manifests visually, the laughter exists in the space between perception and reality, challenging the senses and leaving a lingering sense of vulnerability. It reminds everyone who experiences it that the club is not merely a building of history, architecture, and ambience. It is a place where the echoes of the past, distorted by time and emotion, can return to confront the living in the most unnerving of ways. During the quiet hours, the laughter waits, hidden in corners, behind doors, or along hallways. It erupts suddenly, sharp, mocking, and unnervingly close, leaving witnesses frozen, questioning, and deeply aware of the thin line between the living and the unseen. At the Olympic Club, the phantom laughter endures, a jagged, spectral reminder that some presences do not need bodies, eyes, or words to terrify. Only sound, intention, and the cold, invisible brush of the unseen against the living. The Olympic Club has long been a centerpiece of Centralia, its history filled with stories of elegance, revelry, and occasional tragedy. Though the hotel carefully keeps the exact location of this room a secret, those unlucky enough to spend a night within its walls report experiences that defy logic and leave lasting fear. The most commonly described sensation is intensely physical. Guests often wake in the dead of night, feeling the invisible pressure of hands pressing against their throats. The strangulation is so vivid that it triggers a natural panic, leaving the sleeper gasping for air, heart pounding, and body trembling. Some describe the experience as paralyzing, a sensation of being unable to move, while the unseen force continues its grip. It is as though the room itself channels the despair and terror of the tragedy that occurred there, replaying it for anyone who enters. Nightmares are another hallmark of the room's haunting. Many guests recount dreams of hanging or suffocating, so realistic that they awaken mid-dream, shaking and drenched in sweat. In these visions, the act of strangulation or hanging is not abstract, it is tactile and immediate. Some claim to wake with the feeling of pressure lingering on their chest or throat. The sensation so convincing that it takes time to convince themselves they are truly safe. Even those who initially scoffed at ghost stories find themselves unnerved, their rationality shaken by the intensity of the experience. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the suicide room is the appearance of rope marks on mirrors and reflective surfaces. Guests describe waking to faint, eerie impressions of a noose or rope etched on the glass, as if invisible hands are replaying the final moments of the tragedy. These marks are fleeting, fading slowly over hours or days, yet their impact is immediate and visceral. The sight alone is enough to convince even skeptical visitors that the room holds a lingering presence, a memory of death that refuses to fade. Some report that the marks appear only when they look away, vanishing when examined directly, as though the room itself is aware of their attention and is deliberately hiding the evidence. Staff members who clean and maintain the room are also affected. They speak in hushed tones about the oppressive atmosphere, the weight in the air that is heavier than any normal environment. Doors slammed without cause, objects moving slightly on their own, and subtle temperature drops all contribute to the sense that the room is alive with residual energy. Experienced employees know to work quickly, avoid lingering, and respect the invisible boundary set by whatever lingers there. Even those accustomed to the supernatural admit that this particular room is different, its presence deeply unsettling and persistent. Historians and locals have long speculated on the origin of the haunting. It is believed that a guest once took their life in this very room. Over time, this energy has embedded itself into the space, manifesting for anyone sensitive enough to perceive it. Unlike other hauntings, which may be playful or fleeting, the suicide room seems drawn to the darkest human emotions, replaying the trauma in ways that are both psychological and physical. Those who have stayed in the room describe various strategies to cope. Some attempt to ignore the sensations entirely, closing their eyes and pretending the weight on their chest or hands on their throat is imagined. Others leave immediately, unable to endure the pressure and fear. A few have tried speaking aloud, attempting to communicate with the unseen presence, but results vary. The haunting seems immune to conventional methods of confrontation. Its power is inherent. The psychological impact of the room often lingers long after the guest departs. Nightmares persist. The faint memory of pressure and invisible hands stays with them, and reflections in mirrors can trigger unease, even in ordinary spaces. Many report heightened vigilance at night, a persistent fear of confinement or suffocation, and a subtle awareness of presence in spaces where no one is there. It is a haunting that extends beyond the room itself, leaving an indelible impression on the minds of those who enter. The suicide room of the Olympic Club stands as a chilling reminder of the lasting consequences of tragedy. Its oppressive atmosphere, the sensation of strangulation, the nightmares it inspires, and the mysterious rope marks etched on mirrors all testify to a haunting that is as psychological as it is supernatural. For anyone who spends a night there, the experience is unforgettable, a stark encounter with the weight of despair that refuses to rest. The room waits silently, its presence unseen yet palpably felt, a lingering testament to the sorrow and horror that once unfolded within its walls. The Olympic Club is a place where history lingers in every creaking floorboard, every polished railing, and every corner of its century-old walls. Among its many rooms, one holds a chilling reputation that has persisted for decades. The room with the locked window. At first glance, it appears unremarkably standard guest room with a window, framed by weathered wood and peeling paint, but the stories surrounding it have made staff and visitors wary. The window, permanently sealed, is said to harbor more than just drafts and sunlight. It carries the memory of tragedy, a presence that refuses to be ignored, and a haunting that manifests both in dreams and in the subtle, inexplicable movements of the glass itself. Staff first noticed the phenomenon years ago. The window, designed to open easily, repeatedly returned to its locked position, no matter how carefully it was opened and secured. Housekeepers found themselves baffled. Windows that were unlocked and propped open during the day would be slammed shut the next morning. Attempts to repair or replace the latch proved futile. Even when mechanical explanations were offered, the window seemed to defy reason, resisting every attempt at control. Some staff members reported a subtle vibration or pressure near the frame, a sensation that suggested a force beyond the physical mechanism, as if the window itself were alive and aware. Guests who have stayed in the room often experience vivid, recurring dreams of falling. These dreams are highly consistent. The sensation of free fall through empty space, the rushing wind against the skin, and the terror of inevitable impact. Time and again, sleepers awaken just before hitting the ground, gasping and drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the imagined plunge. Even those skeptical of the paranormal find the dreams unnerving. The physicality and intensity of the sensation suggests that something more than imagination is at play, a lingering echo of the event that gave the window its ominous reputation. Locals whisper that someone once leaped from this very window, sealing it with despair. The details are sparse, obscured by time and the hotel's discretion, but the energy of that moment is said to have imbued the window with a presence that continues to react to anyone who approaches. Guests report an inexplicable pull toward the glass, a sensation that is part curiosity, part dread. It is as though the boundary between the living and the sorrowful memory of the past is concentrated in the frame. The glass acting as a threshold between two worlds. Some employees describe the act of opening the window as almost tactile. The latch may move, but there is resistance, a pressure that can be felt on the fingertips, shoulders, or even across the chest. A sudden drop in temperature often accompanies the movement, as if the air itself rejects intrusion. Others report hearing a faint rush of wind, a whispering exhalation, even when the room is perfectly still. For those sensitive to the supernatural, the experience can be disorienting, leaving them feeling watched or monitored by an unseen presence that seems bound to the window. The room's haunting extends beyond dreams. Shadows appear to shift near the glass, particularly when moonlight strikes the frame at specific angles. Guests have reported the faint reflection of a figure in the window pane, only to find the space behind them empty when they turn. Some describe a subtle sense of vertigo near the window, as if the room itself tilts, enhancing the sensation of impending fall. Others note the persistent anxiety that follows them long after leaving, a lingering fear tied directly to the presence in the room and the window that refuses to open fully. Paranormal investigators have attempted to study the window using cameras, temperature sensors, and electromagnetic detection devices. Some captured fleeting anomalous brief shadows, cold spots, or faint whispers, but nothing conclusive. The haunting seems tied to human perception, manifesting most vividly for those alone in the room, especially at night. It is selective, intelligent, and unnerving, responding to attention while remaining largely imperceptible to casual observation. The locked window is less a physical obstruction than a focal point for lingering grief and unresolved energy. A threshold that connects the present to the moment of despair long ago. Psychologically, the window exerts a profound influence. Guests report heightened awareness of the space, a subtle tension that creeps into their movements, and an inability to rest fully. Some avoid sitting near the window, refusing to look directly at it, for fear of triggering another vivid dream or an unsettling sensation of falling. Others report the faintest whisper of air, even when the window is securely closed, enough to make the skin prickle and the imagination run wild. The combination of physical, psychological, and residual energy effects makes the experience uniquely disquieting, reinforcing the room's notorious reputation. Attempts to modify, repair, or permanently open the window have all failed. Every morning, it is found sealed once again, as if the presence within the frame actively prevents interference. Staff have learned to respect the boundary, approaching it cautiously and avoiding lingering. Guests are warned only subtly, with hushed suggestions and local lore hinting at its history. But the legend continues to grow, fueled by each new encounter, dream, and whispered story. The locked window is more than a structural anomaly. It is a symbol of tragedy, grief, and the persistence of unresolved energy. Its repeated sealing, the vivid dreams it inspires, and the subtle, unnerving presence felt by all who enter make it a haunting that transcends time. In the Olympic Club, the window waits silently, a permanent reminder of despair and the thin line between the living and those who remain caught in moments of pain, forever pressing against the boundaries of the world they left behind. The Olympic Club's theater has long been a place of excitement, culture, and entertainment. Its stage has hosted countless performances, from local plays to traveling acts, and its seats have borne the weight of generations of patrons eager for an evening of spectacle. Yet, beneath the glamour and the echoes of applause lies a presence that defies explanation. The drifting smoke. Unlike ordinary mist or haze, this smoke seems alive, a spectral echo of the theater's past, lingering in the air long after the house lights dim and the final curtain falls. Audience members have long reported the unsettling phenomena. During performances, some recall an unmistakable smell of cigar smoke, thick and pungent, though smoking has been strictly prohibited in the theater for decades. The aroma appears suddenly, filling the rows of seats without source or warning, lingering just long enough to draw attention, then fading as though it were never there. Some dismiss it at first, attributing it to someone sneaking a cigarette outside or a vent carrying odors from the outside world. But repeated occurrences, paired with other strange sensations, have convinced even skeptics that the theater harbors something supernatural. The drifting smoke is more than a smell. Many witnesses report seeing clouds moving above them, curling along the air in the faint glow of stage lighting. At times, the smoke seems to gather into recognizable forms, shapes that resemble seated figures, watching silently from the shadows of the theater. These figures are never fully defined. Edges blur and shift, faces remain indistinct, yet there is a tangible sense of presence, a feeling of eyes trained on the audience or performers below. Patrons describe a chilling sensation of being observed, as if the theater itself has stored the echoes of past audiences, replaying their silent vigil in smoke and shadow. Some staff members have their own unsettling stories. Ushers closing the theater after late-night rehearsals often notice the haze drifting near the balcony, where no heat, vent, or airflow could explain its movement. They describe it curling along the railings, flowing past empty chairs, and pooling in corners before dissipating into nothing. Occasionally, they swear the smoke seems to linger longer near certain seats, as if paying attention to specific areas of the theater. This selective movement has fueled speculation that the drifting smoke is conscious in some way, aware of the room and the people in it. During one particularly memorable rehearsal, a lighting technician reported seeing the smoke coalesced into the rough outline of a seated figure directly in the center of the balcony. The figure appeared to be watching the stage, leaning slightly forward, as though anticipating the performance. As the technician blinked, the form dissolved into the swirling haze, leaving only the lingering scent of tobacco in its place. Attempts to photograph or film the phenomenon during repeated sightings have been unsuccessful. The smoke appears almost intangible, visible only to human eyes, refusing to register on digital sensors. This has contributed to the mystery and the growing legend of the theater's haunting. Historians of the Olympic Club suggest that the smoke may be tied to a bygone era, when cigar smoking was a common practice among theatergoers. Patrons from the early 20th century may have spent long nights in the theater, enveloped in smoke and conversation, leaving behind impressions of their presence. Over decades, These impressions may have coalesced into the drifting forms now reported by audiences and staff. Unlike other hauntings that rely on sound or sudden appearances, the smoke is subtle, atmospheric, and unnerving precisely because it mimics ordinary phenomena, while carrying an extraordinary, unexplainable weight. Witnesses often note that the smoke's movements are deliberate. It drifts toward empty seats as if seeking company, curls along the stage rails, and hovers near performers as if silently judging or observing their work. When it forms figures, they always appear seated, composed, and still, maintaining a silent watch over the theater. Some visitors feel the weight of their gaze, a pressure of unseen attention that causes goosebumps to rise on the arms and neck. The effect is disorienting, particularly during quiet moments between acts, when the room is otherwise empty or filled only with hushed whispers. Paranormal investigators have attempted to study the drifting smoke using thermal imaging, air sampling, and high-resolution cameras. Some have detected temperature fluctuations and minute particles in the air, but none can explain the presence of distinct forms or the uncanny patterns of movement. Others suggest the smoke may be a form of residual haunting, where energy from past audiences or performers continues to manifest, replaying in subtle, ghostly ways. Whatever the cause, those who witness the phenomenon agree that it feels intentional, directed, and deeply connected to the theater itself. Audience members who experience the drifting smoke often describe lingering unease long after leaving the theater. The scent of tobacco in ordinary places can trigger vivid recollections of the spectral figures, while dreams of silent smoke-filled theaters sometimes follow. Even performers report a heightened awareness of the unseen presence, a sensation of being watched during rehearsals or quiet moments between performances. The smoke becomes more than a visual or olfactory curiosity, is an immersive haunting, affecting body, mind, and perception simultaneously. The drifting smoke of the Olympic Club's theater is a testament to the persistence of memory, grief, and lingering energy. It is intangible, fleeting, yet profoundly presents a reminder that the theater is not only a stage for the living, but also a canvas upon which the echoes of the past continue to play. Silent figures, wrapped in curling smoke, remain forever seated, watching, observing, and dissolving into nothing, leaving behind only the faintest scent of cigar smoke and the quiet realization that the theater is never truly empty. The Olympic Club stands as a monument to history, its walls steeped in stories of prosperity, celebration, and tragedy. Among its many curiosities, few are as chilling as the tale of the silent bell, mounted above the building. This old bell has long since fallen out of regular use, its clapper rusted and its rope frayed with age. It is a relic of the club's past, a fixture that was once rung to announce gatherings, ceremonies, or special events. Yet, despite decades of disuse, the bell has developed a reputation for ringing on its own, marking nights with an eerie resonance that resonates through the halls and unsettles anyone who hears it. Staff and locals first noticed the phenomenon decades ago, on quiet nights, when the streets outside were empty and the building was still. A single toll would echo through the club. The sound is low and heavy, vibrating through the wooden beams, traveling down corridors, and settling into every corner of the building. It is not the peal of celebration one might expect, but a solemn, almost mournful tone that carries with it a sense of foreboding. The bell tolls once, never twice, and then falls silent, leaving only the lingering vibration in the chest and the echo in the ears of those present. Each time the bell rings, staff report rushing to the bell tower to investigate, expecting to find a prankster, a malfunction, or some mechanical failure. Yet, time and again, the bell is untouched. No rope has moved, no mechanism appears disturbed, and the clapper rests still. The phenomenon is consistent. The bell sounds as if struck, but no one has touched it. Even the most skeptical employees, accustomed to creaking floors and shifting shadows in an old building, admit that the sound defies explanation. The silent bell is not a trick of acoustics, or the building settling it is something else entirely, something deliberate. Over the years, superstition has grown around the bell. Longtime residents of Centralia claim that the bell tolls to mark a death, a grim warning from the other side. The timing is never predictable, but always solemn, always singular. Some believe it signals the passing of someone within the building, while others maintain it heralds death in the surrounding town. The bell has become a kind of spectral omen, its sound carrying more weight than a simple peal of metal against wood. Those who hear it often report a sudden chill, a tightening in the chest, or a shiver that runs down the spine, as though the sound itself carries the gravity of mortality. Several staff members have shared their experiences in hushed tones. One night, a late-shift janitor reported hearing the bell while sweeping the main hall. The sound was so deep and resonant that it seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. He ran up to the tower, heart pounding, only to find the bell undisturbed, the rope dangling limply. Returning downstairs, he noticed a nearby obituary in the local paper. A longtime resident of Centralia had passed away that evening. The correlation, though anecdotal, reinforced a growing belief that the bell was connected to events beyond the natural world. Guests have also encountered the silent bell, often describing a sensation that is both auditory and emotional. Those in the hotel rooms nearest a tower report waking to a single toll in the middle of the night, a sound so heavy it seems to settle in their chests. Some feel a subtle vibration through the bedframe, the floor, and even the walls, as though the building itself is resonating with the bell's warning. The effect is so pronounced that many lie awake for hours afterward, listening for another toll that never comes. Some find themselves compelled to check on loved ones, or to ensure that everyone they know is safe. Driven by an instinctual dread that the bell has sounded for a reason they cannot yet comprehend. Paranormal investigators have taken an interest in the silent bell over the years. Using audio recorders, motion detectors, and thermal cameras, they attempt to capture evidence of the phenomenon. Occasionally, faint anomalies are detected, a subtle vibration in the metal of the bell, or a spike in electromagnetic activity near the tower. Yet no mechanical explanation has ever fully accounted for the tolls. Some theorists suggest that the bell is a residual manifestation, a lingering echo of the past, tied to the memory of death and loss within the building. Others speculate that it may be a warning sent by spirits who remain bound to the club. Whatever the cause, the experience is undeniably real to those who hear it. The silent bell is more than a simple artifact. It has become a conduit for unease, a symbol of the thin boundary between life and death. Its low, mournful tolling resonates with the emotions and memories of the building. A reminder that the Olympic Club is not merely a space of laughter and celebration, but also one where sorrow and mortality linger. Those who hear the bell feel a weight that goes beyond sound, a presence that is both intangible and unmistakable. The legend of the silent bell persists because it is deeply tied to human perception of fear, mortality, and the unknown. Each toll is a singular experience, one that leaves a lasting impression on those present, compelling them to acknowledge something beyond the ordinary. It is a reminder that even in a bustling, historic venue filled with light and activity, there are places where the past asserts itself, where the echoes of tragedy continue to ripple through the present. For anyone who finds themselves in the Olympic Club on a quiet night, the sound of the bell carries a warning and a memory, a fleeting connection to the unseen. Though it tolls silently and unpredictably, its message is always clear. Some presences linger long after they should have faded, and some warnings from the other side cannot be ignored. The Olympic Club is a building filled with stories of the past, a place where the echoes of history seem to cling to every surface. Among its many hauntings, few are as curious or unsettling as that of the phantom dog. Unlike other specters that haunt the hall's shadowy figures, drifting smoke, or spectral musicians, this presence is alive in a different way. It is tactile, familiar, and unnervingly close, yet it belongs to a world that exists just beyond the ordinary. Guests and staff alike have reported encounters that leave them both awed and uneasy, suggesting a creature bound to the hotel by loyalty, memory, or perhaps tragedy. The most common reports involve sound, Guests frequently describe hearing the unmistakable click of claws on the hardwood floors, a rhythmic tapping that moves from room to room, echoing softly in the quiet corridors. The sound is precise, deliberate, and unmistakably canine. At first, visitors assume a dog has been brought inside, only to discover that no animal is present. Staff enforce a strict no pets policy, and even deliveries or service animals never account for the audible movements that appear when the halls are empty. The clicks continue, sometimes for minutes, fading and reappearing in patterns that suggest a purpose, a patrol, or even a routine familiar from life. In addition to the sound of claws, many witnesses report soft panting and the gentle rustle of fur. Guests lying in bed have described the sensation of something brushing against their legs, the warmth and slight pressure of an unseen body pressing against them. Some have even felt a cold, ghostly nose sniffing their hands in the dim light of the room. It is a presence that is immediately recognizable as canine, yet intangible and fleeting, leaving only a faint warmth or the lingering sound of paws as proof of its passage. The experience is disarming because it blends familiarity with the impossible, a creature both loyal and untouchable. Staff members recount encounters that are equally unnerving. Housekeepers cleaning the hallways late at night often hear the rhythmic tapping of claws behind them. When they turn, the halls are empty, yet the sound continues, sometimes passing beneath their feet or circling around corners. Some employees have reported seeing a dark, fleeting silhouette shaped, unmistakably like a dog slipping between the shadows of doorways or leaping lightly over stair rails before vanishing into nothing. Others note that objects occasionally shift slightly when the phantom is nearby. A door ajar, a chair nudged back as if an invisible tail brushed against it. While no one has been harmed, the encounters carry an intensity that cannot be ignored, a sense that the creature is present and aware of its surroundings. Guests describe a variety of emotional responses to the phantom dog. Some experience fear, startled by the sudden sound of paws on an empty floor or the sensation of being brushed by ghostly fur. Others report a surprising sense of comfort, as if the dog is protective rather than malevolent. Many interpret its presence as a guardian, a loyal spirit patrolling the halls to watch over those who stay in the hotel. Children, in particular, are sometimes less afraid, laughing at the fleeting taps or trying to follow the invisible animal, though the figure always eludes them. Adults, however, often sense a weightier presence, a reminder that this is no ordinary pet but a being tied to history, bound to the building by forces unseen. Local legend offers some explanation for the phantom dog. It is said that the spirit belonged to a beloved companion of an early hotel proprietor or a longtime resident. A loyal animal that followed its human through life and perhaps even through death. Some claim that the dog died tragically in the hotel or nearby, leaving behind a devotion so strong that it continues to linger in spectral form. Unlike other ghosts, which may be caught in moments of anger, fear, or sorrow, the phantom dog seems content in its haunting, maintaining a routine as if the halls are its territory and the living its wards. The sounds of claws and panting are not chaotic. They are deliberate, almost reassuring once one becomes accustomed to them. Several paranormal investigators have tried to document the phantom dog. Audio recorders occasionally capture faint tapping, and infrared cameras sometimes show a dark shape darting across hallways. Yet, the spirit remains largely intangible. Witnesses insist that no video or photo can fully capture the essence of the creature. The warmth of its brush, the faint panting, the rhythm of its paws, and the uncanny feeling of awareness it carries. It is a haunting that engages multiple senses, blending the audible, tactile, and emotional into an experience that is both fleeting and unforgettable. Guests who encounter the phantom dog often leave the hotel with a lasting impression. Some return specifically hoping to hear the taps of its paws, feeling a strange affection for a spirit that cannot be touched. Others remain wary, checking corners of hallways or avoiding the quietest rooms where the sound is most pronounced. Yet nearly all recognize a truth that is difficult to explain. The dog is not here to harm anyone. It is a sentinel, a lingering presence that patrols the Olympic Club with loyalty unmatched. A reminder that devotion can transcend life and even death. The Phantom Dog is a unique haunting, blending the familiar with the supernatural. Its sounds, movements, and subtle presence demonstrate a connection to the past, a devotion rooted in love, loyalty, and memory. For anyone walking the halls of the Olympic Club late at night, the clicks of claws on hardwood, the soft panting, and the ghostly brush of fur serve as an eerie but comforting reminder. Some spirits remain, not in anger or sorrow, but in service, bound forever to protect the living and keep the memory of loyalty alive. The Olympic Club has long been a place of camaraderie, revelry, and the faintly intoxicating aroma of history. Its bar, polished wood and brass gleaming under warm lights, has seen decades of laughter, gossip, and celebration. But amidst the cheer and clinking glasses, some visitors report encounters that are impossible to explain. Experiences that suggest the club is not just a space for the living. The phenomenon known as the final toast is one of the most curious and unnerving. Glasses that lift on their own, laughter that echoes from empty corners, and the unmistakable feeling of unseen companions sharing a drink. Witnesses describe the first signs subtly. While enjoying an evening at the bar, they notice a glass shifting slightly, tilting as if someone were holding it. At first, it seems a trick of the light, a balance issue, or perhaps a prank. Yet the motion grows deliberate. The glass lifts, just enough to meet another invisible vessel, and the faint metallic clink resonates through the room. It is always precise, like the practiced movement of someone accustomed to raising a toast. Patrons often freeze, eyes widening as they watch, unsure whether to reach out or pretend they didn't see it. When they do, the glass may settle gently back onto the counter, leaving behind only the faint residue of liquid and the lingering warmth of what feels like a presence. The phenomenon extends beyond movement. Laughter often accompanies the lifted glass, soft, fleeting, sometimes mischievous, sometimes jubilant. It is never loud, never overpowering. Rather, it echoes faintly, wrapping around the listeners like a memory. Guests describe the sound as being close enough to feel intimate, yet far enough to remain untouchable. The laughter does not belong to any individual. It is collective, a chorus of voices that once filled the bar in life and continues to do so in death. In many cases, the laughter is immediately followed by silence. The sudden emptiness emphasizing the presence that was just there. Staff members who work late-night shifts have their own stories of the final toast. One bartender recounted polishing glasses when, without warning, one lifted from the rack, hovering in the air. The movement was gentle, deliberate, almost polite. It tilted forward, producing a soft clink against another glass that had remained unmoved moments before. When he reached to steady it, the glass sank slowly back to the counter, and the faintest scent of whiskey hung in the air. He later learned that this occurred on the anniversary of a patron who had frequented the club decades prior, sparking speculation that the spirits of the bar's former regulars continue their gatherings long after death. Some patrons have reported tactile sensations, as though invisible hands are holding a glass alongside them. The weight is subtle but unmistakable, a warmth or pressure on the fingertips, the gentle guidance of a companion unseen. Others feel a brush of air, like a soft exhale across their skin, timed perfectly with the clinking of glasses. The effect is intimate, personal, and deeply unsettling, leaving witnesses simultaneously amazed and fearful. For many, the experience is less about fright and more about the eerie continuity of life beyond the living. Historical accounts of the Olympic Club suggest that the bar has always been central to its social life. In its early years, members and travelers gathered to discuss business, celebrate achievements, and mark significant events. Some of these patrons, it is said, had deep attachments to the club, returning night after night and forming bonds that extended beyond ordinary friendship. Over time, a lore emerged that these spirits, unwilling to leave the place that had been a second home, remained as unseen participants in the final celebrations. The final toast is their way of continuing the tradition. of maintaining the ritual of raising a glass even after life has ended. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the occurrences. Cameras occasionally catch the faint motion of a glass, though many times the movement is too subtle to capture on film. Audio recorders pick up whispers of laughter, sometimes overlapping, sometimes trailing off into silence. Thermal imaging sometimes shows fleeting, cold traces where the spirits are believed to linger, yet no one can fully explain the coordination of motion and sound. Investigators suggest that residual energy may remain in the bar, an imprint of countless toasts over decades, replaying in a loop for those sensitive enough to perceive it. Witnesses frequently describe a growing awareness when the final toast begins. The room feels heavier yet lighter at the same time, as if the space is holding its breath. The aroma of aged spirits, tobacco, and polished wood intensifies, lingering with a richness that seems impossible for the present moment alone. Patrons often feel a sense of connection, as if they are participating in a centuries-old tradition, drinking alongside those who came before. The experience is unnerving because it blends the tangible with the supernatural, the visible glass, the familiar scent, the audible clink, all tied to a presence that is undeniably otherworldly. Some guests embrace the encounter, lifting their own glasses in silent acknowledgement, while others step back, too startled to respond. Children rarely notice the phenomenon, but adults, particularly those attuned to history or sensitive to the paranormal, feel its full impact. The final toast is both celebration and reminder, a link between the living and the departed, reinforcing the idea that the bar is a place of memory, tradition, and lingering spirits. The effect of the final toast often lasts long after patrons leave the bar. Many describe a lingering sense of warmth, companionship, and a touch of melancholy. The memory of lifted glasses, clinking echoes, and the gentle sound of laughter follows them home, a subtle reminder that some gatherings never truly end. It is a haunting without fear, a presence that is felt more than seen, and a connection to the history of the Olympic Club that cannot be ignored. The final toast is a haunting rooted in continuity, ritual, and loyalty. The glasses lift, the laughter echoes, and the spirits remain, celebrating in their eternal club. Guests and staff alike are left with the knowledge that in the Olympic Club, some toasts are never finished, and some companions never truly leave. The bar, alive with memory and ghostly presence, continues to witness the raising of glasses, the clinking of metal, and the joy of a tradition that transcends the boundaries of life and death. And so, the McMenamins Olympic Club stands not only as a relic of Washington's wild past, but as a living testament to those who refuse to move on. Every creak of the stairs, every shadow in the corner, every whisper in the night carries with it a story, some tragic, some playful, but all unnervingly real to those who have felt them. Perhaps, when you visit, you'll raise a glass at the bar, feeling the air stir beside you, or sleep in one of the upstairs rooms and wake to the sound of footsteps pacing just beyond your door. The Olympic Club doesn't need to beg for its history, it tells it, through the whispers of the dead. So next time you're in Centralia, step inside, order a drink, stay the night. Just remember, not all of the guests at McMenamins Olympic Club ever check out. Until we meet again, stay curious, stay brave, and as always, sleep with one eye open.